Number 10. Wonder Woman Dark Knight's Death Metal. Now, although this is technically in the main continuity, the Wonder Woman that appears in Dark Knight's Death Metal absolutely deserves a spot on this list today because she is one serious badass. Introduced to us in the first issue of Dark Knight's Death Metal, Wonder Woman alongside Swamp Thing is a guard of the demonic-looking prison that holds any villain that does not want to team up with the Batman Who Laughs. So it would kinda seem like she's working for him, but it's revealed later that is not the case when she just impales and rips the Batman Who Laughs in two with her new awesome-looking weapon, the Chainsaw of Truth. Wonder Woman's whole goal in this storyline is to correct the mistakes that have been made and to set everything back on track by somehow resetting the timeline. Basically, she's the Wonder Woman we all know and love, stuck in one of the darkest and scariest DC storylines to date, and that is why she is starting off our list today. Check her out for yourself, starting with 2020's Dark Knight's Death Metal, Volume 1, Number 1. Number 9. Bizarra. You can probably guess it from the name, but Bizarra is the Bizarro version of Wonder Woman. Now, if you're not familiar with Bizarro, he is basically an incomplete clone of Superman, which means that Bizarra is an incomplete clone of Wonder Woman. She was created using the powers of the Fifth Dimension and is meant to be the evil counterpart to our Wonder Woman, but I think we all know that Bizarro versions of any hero never really get the job done. Even though Bizarra possesses both the bracelets of submission and the lasso of truth like her counterpart, she's only strong enough to challenge Wonder Woman in a one-on-one duel, and when it comes to brains, oh man, trust me, she does not even come close to Wonder Woman. As a member of the Injustice League of Un-America, Bizarro was one of the many that was captured by Metallo in his attempt to rule over Bizarro World, but was thankfully freed by Bizarro himself. Now, I think my favorite thing about Bizarra and the other Bizarro copies is their way of speaking. She spoke in a very twisted tongue and always meant the opposite of what she said. For example, when she says, "I love you," she actually means, "I hate you." Check her out for yourself in 2015's The Multiversity Guidebook, Number 1. Number 8. Brunhilde. Hailing from Earth 10, a universe where many of our favorite heroes have been turned into villainous versions of themselves, comes Valkyrie Brunhilde, the Wonder Woman of this Earth that is based on Norse mythology, as opposed to, the original Greek. On Earth 10, all these superheroes we're familiar with are part of the German army and are believers of fascism, so from that you can probably assume that most of them are pure evil. Brunhilde is a member of the New Reichman alongside other dark iterations of the Justice League members, whose only real goal is to rid the world of the freedom fighters and spread their ideals across the land. The New Reichman are, however, taken down pretty much from the inside after Overman began to feel guilty about his past deeds. Honestly, put simply, Brunhilde is an evil version of Wonder Woman that can and will go to any lengths necessary to get the job done. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2015's The Multiversity Guidebook, Number 1. Number 7. Deceased Wonder Woman. Taking place in the Deceased DC universe, Deceased is a miniseries that follows the aftermath of Cyborg's body being used to carry a version of the anti-life equation that ended up turning the general population into zombies. In this miniseries, we see Wonder Woman become a member of the Unliving, which is basically DC's equivalent of zombies, whose whole purpose is to spread anti-life by either infecting or killing living things. They show very little signs of intelligence, and they still retain the ability to utilize their skill sets, powers, and technologies respectively to a surprisingly effective manner. The Infective have also shown numerous times of coming up with very elaborate strategies and tactical decisions to bypass pockets of resistance and cause as much death and destruction as possible. Our infected Wonder Woman actually showed that she was able to form coherent and full sentences when she was interrogated by Cyborg, implying that she still has some humanity left in her. However, after being set free, she immediately decapitated Cyborg to preserve any secrets she told him. Honestly, all I have to say is Wonder Woman's strength and skills combined with the mind and body of a zombie makes for a scary hero. So check her out for yourself, starting with 2019's Deceased, Number 1.
Number 6. Beats down a god with his own weapon. This one comes from Wonder Woman issue 773. Legacy numbering, where Wonder Woman takes on the god Thor. Not Marvel's Thor, who is very much a hero, but DC's Thor, who is still technically a hero, but also is kind of more of a brute than the Thor Odinson of Marvel's Earth 616. Wonder Woman ends up in DC's version of Asgard after the events of Dark Knight Death Metal. Here she learns that there seems to be a problem with souls going missing. She attempts to solve it, but ends up bonking heads with Thor, who isn't much for diplomacy. At least, not initially. Don't worry though, Diana puts him in his place, besting him in combat, taking Mjolnir, smashing him in the face with it before crushing it between her two hands. She's like, hammers, not really my thing. And of course, only then is Thor willing to listen to what she has to say. But don't worry, it all works out in the end. Everyone's able to sit at a table and have a discussion and a beer afterwards, so yay.
Number 5. Frank Miller's Wonder Woman. Hopefully we all know who Frank Miller is, the writer of The Dark Knight Returns and Daredevil Born Again. Well, Miller also took a crack at the character that is Wonder Woman in his Batman series The Dark Knight Strikes Back. In this series, heroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, and Captain Marvel have been forced to work for the government, since their loved ones are being held hostage and are under threat. Superman is even ordered by the president, who turns out to be a computer-generated front for Lex Luthor and Brainiac, to stop Batman. It eventually gets to the point in the story where Superman, Wonder Woman, and their daughter Lara joins forces with Batman once again because they deem his plan to be the only way to get out of this whole mess. Now I'll be honest, this Wonder Woman isn't on this list today because of how dark the story is. It's mostly because this is considered to be one of the worst incarnations of Wonder Woman to date. Now she's definitely the warrior you expect from Wonder Woman, but her cold and quite frankly sexist portrayal in the comics was nothing short of distasteful. It also doesn't help that her humanity was put in question throughout the entirety of the graphic novel. If you feel like you can stomach it, check out this Wonder Woman and this whole series, starting with 2002's The Dark Knight Strikes Again, number 1.
Number 4, bat for a bat. Jealousy can turn people, sometimes for the best. Like if your ex starts dating somebody new and you're like, I'll show you by bettering myself physically and mentally. Haha, I showed you. Or sometimes jealousy can make you fight another superhero because you're too in love with Batman. Either or. In Batman Brave and the Bold issue 78, we find Batgirl and Wonder Woman going at it, all for the love of Batman. I mean, it starts off kinda cute. Wonder Woman writes, I love Batman in the sky, hell yeah. And then this plane comes in and who could it be? Is that Batgirl? What is she? Oh, she's wiping with a lovely message, awesome. Oh, she's writing something of her own, what does it say? Only I love Batman, Batgirl, nice. So Wonder Woman's like, haha, okay, hold on a sec. Lasso's Batgirl, she's upset, I mean fair, she just wiped away her message and she's like, no, I love him more. Impossible, she says, and then this is where Batgirl goes too far. She says back, nothing is impossible for you, you unhip chick. Wonder Woman ended up winning, but at what cost?
Number 3, Superwoman. I feel like we all knew this alternate Wonder Woman was going to end up on this list today. Hailing from Earth 3, the Earth that is said to be the birthplace of evil, Superwoman is a renegade Amazon who is also taking on the identity of Lois Lane, depending on the version that we're talking about here. Depending on her origin, she is either from Paradise Island or its antimatter equivalent known as Damnation Island. While there are many versions of her out there, one thing that they all have in common is her sadistic personality and the love triangle she has with her colleagues. Equipped with a lasso of submission, a barbed and much scary looking version of the lasso of truth that forces the captor to not only comply with the user, but also fall in love with them, which she has used a few times to her advantage, if you know what I mean. As a member of the crime syndicate, she helped imprison most of the members of the various Justice Leagues in the Firestorm Matrix and began a reign of terror over the world, eliminating any resistance in their way. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with 1964's Justice League of America number 29, or skip ahead to 2013's Justice League Volume 2, number 23. Number 2, Injustice Wonder Woman. Easily one of the most dark and evil versions of Wonder Woman out there. Not only did she see Superman's descent into evil before it ever happened, but she also actively encouraged it, practically manipulating the Man of Steel when he was at his worst for her own personal gain. Not only that, but by the events of the original Injustice video game, she had been ruling Paradise Island with an iron fist and showed absolutely no remorse. She served as Superman's right hand and took the place of Lois Lane as his new love interest. However, he clearly showed no love towards her because he was still mourning the loss of his dead wife, who he killed himself. When she is confronted by her mainstream counterpart, the mainstream Wonder Woman reprimands her for blindly following a man who does not feel as much devotion to her as she does to him. And once Wonder Woman is defeated, she is taken by her fellow Amazons to be imprisoned for her role in the regime and is later seen on Kahndaq during the events of Injustice 2 as she has been exiled. Take a look at her story for yourself, starting with 2013's Injustice Gods Among Us number 1, or honestly just feel free to replay the games. And finally, number 1, Flashpoint Wonder Woman. When the Flash accidentally created Flashpoint as a result of attempting to save his mother, the ripple effects changed the timeline to the worst it's ever been. You know, Batman is Thomas Wayne, Superman is in a government facility, and Wonder Woman is the monarch of the Amazons and currently at war with Atlantis, all because she killed Aquaman's wife, who knew Wonder Woman was having an affair with her husband. With all of the normal powers and accessories that make Wonder Woman a formidable foe, this iteration of Wonder Woman seems to lack the empathy that prevents Diana from absolutely losing it and killing everyone. As the war went on, Aquaman and Wonder Woman forged an alliance to take down a mutual enemy, Batman. As both monarchs send their troops to Batman's lair, the world is erased, killing every single inhabitant. Absolutely cruel and bloodthirsty, this Wonder Woman has something that she shares with her Injustice counterpart: her lack of love and above all, her sickening lack of humanity. Now I love the Flashpoint timeline with all of my heart, so Why not check it and her out for yourself, starting with 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, Number 1.
Number 10. Almost killed an innocent. During his first long-running Wolverine series, Wolverine at one point must face off against Lady Deathstrike. The first time around that this happens in the series is back in the past, after Wolverine has seemingly traveled back in time via a picture. It makes a lot more sense if you read the story, but it's basically what happens. While attempting to escape Lady Deathstrike and defeat the German World War II soldiers who have infiltrated the part of Spain Wolverine is in, he and the rebels are faced with the decision of what to do with a young prisoner who has seen too much and could cause them to be captured if he's forced to talk. Prisoner's name is Jamie, by the way. I didn't write that down, but I know that, just in case you're wondering. One of the options on the table is to simply take out the prisoner Jamie, but because of his age, Wolverine ultimately helps to let the boy go and set him free. However, for a small moment there, it is implied that Wolverine has basically made the other choice and decided to kill the prisoner rather than let him walk free, with a promise that he won't tell anyone what he has seen or heard about where the rebels are headed. It's a very shocking moment where you're like, wait, did that just happen? Don't worry, it didn't happen. Oh, it only almost happened. The notion was entertained, and that I think is still pretty bad. Number 9. Kills. One of the worst things about Wolverine in general, but also maybe one of the best things, is that he kills. Or more now that he's willing to kill, I guess. Although back in the day, he really did kill pretty indiscriminately. And like I said, it was basically what made him one of the worst, while also being the best at what he does. Although, as Wolverine has even said himself, what he does isn't usually very nice. Now Wolverine is more reserved to maiming those he comes up against, only really killing those who he feels really deserve it, who are beyond redemption. But even then, the fact that Wolverine thinks he gets to decide those folks' fate could be seen as, well, pretty problematic. I mean, Wolverine's a pretty good dude all around, but I still don't think, even as a hero, that he should get the judgment call on who lives and who dies. You know what I mean? Though it definitely makes him a way more complex and interesting character. I will say that, so it is good in that way. Number 8. Relationship with Squirrel Girl. Wolverine's relationship with Squirrel Girl, as was established in New Avengers, might be considered by some to be one of the worst things he's ever done, or that was ever done to him as a character, I guess. This is likely because Squirrel Girl, aka Dorian Green, is often depicted as being from a different generation entirely than Wolverine. And that's not even considering that he's actually even older than he appears, and than the generation that he first appeared in. Squirrel Girl and Wolverine were implied to have had a romantic relationship in the 2010 New Avengers series in issue number 7, and many consider it to be pretty odd. And I gotta say, the way it's also kind of weirdly like shoehorned in there, you're like, what? Why is this in here? What purpose, narratively, does this really give us?
Coming in at number 7, we have the vicious Vampire Lord Wolverine. In an alternate universe where vampires have launched an all-out assault on the United States, most of the X-Men are bidden and mind-controlled by the Lord of the Vampires, Dracula. Unfortunately for Dracula, however, Wolverine's healing ability allows him to regain his own mental control despite becoming a vampire, and thus is able to overthrow Dracula and become their leader. Consumed by a bloodlust that amplifies his already pretty terrifying rage, Wolverine and his vampire army are able to wipe out most other superpowered life on the planet, only finally being defeated by the combined forces of Doctor Strange and the Punisher as a vampire hunting duo.
Number 6. Got even with the Punisher. So the Punisher has done some pretty heinous things to Wolverine over the years in their ongoing fight for who can be the most edgy. This has less to do with Wolverine and Punisher feuding within the comics, and more to do with shots being fired between a few of their passionate writers, Wolverine's Frank Thierry and Punisher's Garth Ennis. Now granted, Thierry has also written a few Punisher titles in his time, although I don't think Ennis has ever written a Wolverine titled book, at least not as far as I know, which is surprising to me. But anyways, I digress. In Thierry's 2003 issue of Wolverine, issue 186, Thierry ended up aiming to get revenge on the Punisher for what Garth Ennis had him do in 2002 during his Marvel Knights run on Punisher in issue number 17, Ennis had Punisher brutally attack and maim Wolverine, basically, even going so far as to steamroll him, and some other things, which I don't know if I can even say on YouTube, but they were bad. To get revenge, Thierry had Wolverine imply the Punisher was gay. Doesn't sound so bad until you read it and you see how it's presented, with Logan implying the Punisher is basically lesser or less of a man or a hero because of his possible sexual orientation. Yikes. Maybe don't do that. Maybe don't write that. It's unfortunate. unfortunate, because now that's also on Wolverine as a character. Eek. Number 5. Jean Grey gets more help than she bargained for. Jean gets more help than she asked for from Wolverine in this issue of X-Men. In fact, she didn't even really ask for his help to begin with, but she did complain about her ability to move freely in her outfit and her struggle to kind of like tear it so that she could move a little bit more freely. Which obviously was a classic mistake, because you know Logan is always more than happy to help Jeannie gain more mobility by maybe, you know, parting with pieces of her garment. Hey, he's just trying to help her out. This all goes down in the very first X-Men Christmas special that we ever got. In this story, the X-Men are kidnapped, and it's during their daring escape that Jean complains of her inability to move freely. She's trying to like tear her dress. So Wolverine, being the gentleman he is, sees her struggling and decides to help her tear away the bottom half of her gown, freeing up her movement, but at the expense of both irritating and seemingly confusing Jean, who actually responds with, "Hey, not so blasted short. Thank you very much. I think." I just love that whole response. She's like, "I'm mad, but like what even happened?" Number 4 became Apocalypse. Of course, this one also did not happen in the main continuity, but hey, it still happened, so it still counts. This all went down in Age of Apocalypse, where Wolverine, here known as Weapon X, would fight against Apocalypse for most of his life. At one point, he was part of Magneto's X-Men, but would leave them to rescue Jean Grey, his love, and later his wife, and fight alongside her against Apocalypse in their own way. Eventually, however, Jean was believed to have been killed, and Weapon X would become a recluse, only to find out years later that she was actually alive. Dun dun dun. When the Celestials returned to Earth following the death of Apocalypse, James Howlett offered himself to the Celestials in order to prevent the destruction of Earth. However, this caused him to become the very villain he had hated the most, as the Celestials used tech to modify him, giving him great power, but basically warping his mind, and causing him to become Apocalypse's heir, known as Weapon Omega. He was basically just like, "Evolution is what it's all about, baby." People were like, "But don't you see? You're Apocalypse now." And he's like, "But it's different. I'm trying to save people by killing people." Wait a minute, maybe you're right.
Coming in at number 3, we have Hydra Wolverine. Hailing from the reality known as Earth 1720, this version of Wolverine is fully committed to the evil ideology of the organization Hydra, complete with a new green and yellow color scheme to his costume. Married to this universe's version of the Invisible Woman, who also happens to be this universe's version of Madam Hydra, this Wolverine was apparently successful in conquering his home reality along with his lover, and has since begun to travel the multiverse searching for more worlds to destroy in the universe's most twisted romantic honeymoon. Luckily for the Marvel multiverse, this Wolverine would be defeated by a variant of Kitty Pryde and the rest of the Exiles, who wound up tricking him into stabbing himself with his own adamantium claws. Better luck next time, Hydra.
Number 2 made moves on MJ. So this one is so awful, it of course cannot come from the main canon of Earth 616. Instead, this point comes to us from the alternate reality of Earth 1610, also known as the Ultimate Universe. After Wolverine had She attempted to get back at him by making him telepathically swap bodies with the person he hated the most, which ended up being Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Although Jean later says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know this would happen to you, Peter. Oops." But anyways, while swapped, both heroes struggle to deal with the everyday while occupying each other's bodies. However, Wolverine still manages to find some time to put some moves on MJ. Well, they don't seal the deal. This is really messed up because Mary Jane at this point in time is a teenager, and she didn't even know that Peter and Logan had swapped bodies, so she thought that it was just Peter looking for some action instead of the super old at this point, thanks to his healing factor, X-Men hero Wolverine. Although not a very heroic moment here, Wolverine. What you doing? Don't do that. Number 1, kill Daken. I think one of the worst things you can do as a parent is to kill those you're supposed to be looking out for and taking care of and protecting, even if your son happens to be the often villainous Daken, now commonly referred to by his actual birth/human name, Akihiro. At one point, Wolverine was forced to put down Akihiro during a fight. Akihiro had held a grudge against his old man for years, having been trained by Romulus to hate Logan after being stolen from his mother's womb and raised by Romulus. For years, Wolverine thought his son was dead, not knowing to come searching for Akihiro. But Akihiro was raised to believe he was basically abandoned, and he also grew up in a household where people didn't like him because he was half Japanese and half Canadian, so that was another issue. Thanks to some plotting from the devious and diabolical mind of Victor Creed, aka Wolverine's nemesis Sabretooth, Wolverine was forced into a death match with Daken, a match that ended with Wolverine killing Akihiro, drowning him in a puddle, while sadly thinking of what could have been had Akihiro been given a chance at a semi-normal life, being raised by Wolverine and of course his now deceased mother Itsu. What would it have been like if their life had been happy? We'll never know because he gets drowned in a puddle. But don't worry, Akihiro's alive and well now, so it all fixed itself. And now he and Wolverine are on great terms, so never mind, I guess. Number 10. Rejected. Kind of. This one comes from JLA issue number 90 from the 1997 series. Here, Wonder Woman and Batman eventually share a kiss, which prompts Diana to look inside herself and see how she really feels about Bruce and the potential for a relationship with him. After looking deep within her subconscious by using the trans-consciousness articulator, try saying that 5 times fast, Diana decides it would be best if she and Bruce didn't actually end up together. She tells him as much, just as he seems to be ready to say the same. Although he also makes quite the face when she asks him if he felt being with her was worth risking all they already had as friends. And while Bruce seems to say that he agrees with Diana wholeheartedly, his face and the parentheses in his speech bubble seem to imply otherwise to me. All in all, I think both of these two ended up a little bit embarrassed by the whole ordeal, so it's a bit of a two-way street with this one. Batman's embarrassed, Diana's a little embarrassed.
Number 9. Super intimate. Guys, superheroes have emotions just like us, okay? They meet other supers, they fall in love, they have super babies, they have lives too, it's fair. Sometimes key intimate moments are hard to conceal when you have the power of a god. So after the triumph that is The Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller decided to dive into a scene that we could have all gone without, involving her and Superman. So her and Superman get it on. In a fancy super hotel, maybe the Fortress of Solitude? No, God no. They get it on in the sky, you know, causing massive tidal waves, volcanoes are shooting off, they even moved the earth a bit. Man, even people are evacuating islands. Like, this is a bad day for everybody but Wonder Woman, of course. Next time you guys want to get it on for a 5-panel straight, I don't know, maybe Egypt. Someplace with a lot of sand and openness. Don't be blasting rocks at innocents. It's not nice.
Number 8. Defeat 'em to beat 'em. You know how we've mentioned the time that Batman incapacitated inadvertently the whole Justice League thanks to his contingency plans being stolen and then used by Ra's al Ghul? Well, he isn't the only one to defeat the Justice League. In fact, Wonder Woman defeated the Justice League without the interference or influence of anyone else. She did it single-handedly, and instead of it being a betrayal, it was actually to try and protect the League. However, the realization that Wonder Woman could take them all out so easily was likely pretty embarrassing when they came to afterwards. This all happened in League of One, where Diana defeated the League in order to protect them against a prophecy. You see, they had to go up against a dragon, but it was supposed to be the League's fate to both succeed in defeating the dragon, but also die in the process of winning that battle. To spare the rest of her friends and teammates, Diana beat them so that she could face the dragon alone and hopefully be the only one to both defeat it and possibly die in the process. Number 7. Cheaters never prosper. This was like a whole thing where I feel like everyone was kind of embarrassed. Like, pretty much everyone involved, I feel like, was embarrassed in this one. I know I was embarrassed watching this happen. Oof. We are talking about when in the DCEU in Wonder Woman 1984, Diana competes in an Amazonian triathlon against the other Amazons, despite being very much their junior. The princess is hopeful that she can win the competition despite her lack of experience and her youth in comparison to her sisters. However, when she loses her horse, she has to get resourceful in order to catch back up and ends up taking a shortcut to do so. However, apparently it turns out that this is cheating, and so her perceived victory is considered null and void by her mother, the hero, Queen Hippolyta, who also seems pretty disappointed, but still hopeful when it comes to her daughter's attempt. She's like, look, you can't cheat, but maybe next time, maybe you get him next time. Don't take shortcuts. I was like embarrassed because I was like, really? That was cheating? Oh, okay. I would have done that too. I'm with you, Diana.
Number 6. Whom God Destroys Wonder Woman. This version of Wonder Woman only showed up in a 4-issue series called Superman and Wonder Woman Who Gods Destroy. This storyline takes place in an alternate world where Europe is still under the control of the Germans, and Lois Lane actually steps up to the plate as the new Wonder Woman in order to protect those around her from the tyrannical ruling of the original Wonder Woman and Superman. Not a whole lot is known about this evil Wonder Woman other than the fact that she betrayed her home in order to obtain more power. And just like the other evil versions of her, her lack of humanity is incredibly evident as she looks down on Lois Lane's Wonder Woman for just being immortal. The story ends with Lois defeating the evil Wonder Woman, and it is revealed that the gods Zeus and Hera were actually playing a game of chess using the world as their chess pieces. and that's why everything is so messed up. Oddly enough though, the story doesn't quite end there, because once everyone is defeated, everything seems to be pretty much back to normal. Superman, Lois, and Wonder Woman all decide to live together on Superman's fortress on the moon. Check out this miniseries for yourself, starting with 1997's Superman and Wonder Woman, Whom Gods Destroy, number 1.
Number 5. Can't Stop Killing. It's hard to tell who would be more embarrassed in this scenario, Wonder Woman or all of her friends who try to reach out to her and really epically fail. This all goes down in a dark multiverse tale, a darker version of War of the Gods. Here, Wonder Woman ends up losing her mother and in her darkness finds herself possessed and overtaken by Hecate, who uses Wonder Woman as her host to reach out and conquer Earth. Wonder Woman's friends try to stop Diana and reach her, but she's trapped deep within a pit of despair after having not properly dealt with her emotions, basically. Struggling to find her way back to love and hope, the only solution is for many magic users of DC to band together, sacrificing themselves in order to defeat Hecate, but still unable to bring back Diana. Whew. Zatanna, as a result, keeps Hecate in Diana's body locked away, hoping to one day find a cure for the possession so she can bring back her friend once more. Number 4. Rejected. But for real this time. Real rejection. So this isn't rejection of the romantic sort, but it is the rejection of a kind of, like a team-up sort, I guess you could say. In Wonder Woman the Hecate, Bruce and Diana end up at odds with one another. As such, the two end up in a fight with one another. Wonder Woman handily ends up defeating Batman in that fight, placing her boot on his head as he lays in a puddle, and urges him to not get back up. Batman decides to surrender, which I think is a good choice. Instead of fighting back, Batman tries a new tactic and begs for Diana's mercy and protection. This shocks Wonder Woman as Batman clings to her boots. He calls on the age-old ritual and rites to seek her power and her aid. Wonder Woman, however, reminds Bruce of his history, saying that in times previous, heroic men have been denied, as she chooses to deny him now. Ouch. Looks like Batman needs to brush up on his reading of the Iliad, apparently.
Number 3. Hunted the Huntress. Now, when it comes to non-canon stories or alternate dark realities, sure, it doesn't really count as much. You can kind of put those away in your head and pretend like they don't exist. But these horrible actions are still done by our beloved heroes. It's hard to get over some of these happenings. It's kind of like when you have a dream your sibling is being mean to you, and then you wake up the next morning just angry at them for no reason. Like before school, they're like, "Good morning," and you're like, "Morning," whatever. Shut up. So on the topic of injustice, we find our main supers in a world that's not so bright. Issue 21 of Injustice Year 3 shows us just how great Wonder Woman is at cracking the whip, when she wraps the lasso of pain around the neck of Huntress. And then the crack we hear is, well, it's exactly what you think. Now, she didn't mean to kill her, but I also didn't mean to wrist shot an orange hockey ball at my neighbor's parked car when I was 13. Accident or not, you're still paying the price, Buster.
Number 2. Defeated by love? That's right, Wonder Woman actually defeated someone with basically just the power of love. Although I suppose I shouldn't say like just the power of love. After all, love is kinda Wonder Woman's biggest ideal, I'd say, and it also is extremely powerful if you know how to use it. Case in point, when Diana went up against a villainous Donna Troy. Donna seemingly had the upper hand in the fight, claiming to be the more powerful of the two, designed to be a more perfect version of Diana when Wonder Woman decided to bust out one of her most effective weapons, the lasso of truth, which unlike Ghost Rider's pen and stare, almost always actually works on the folks that she targets it with. I know there's gonna be Ghost Rider fans coming for me in the comments. They're gonna be like, look, the pen and stare is great, but I'm just saying, I can give you so many examples of times it didn't work. I think it's almost equal, it's like a 1-for-1. Compelled to see and realize the truth, Diana reminded Donna of what it really meant to be an Amazon. It's not about power, you see, or strength, it's about being part of a culture, being part of a family, being a sister. That is the most important defining word of Amazonian culture. Sister. And with that one word and realization, Diana handily defeats her sister Donna using nothing but truth and love. Number 1. The truth comes out. One of the most memed Power Girl and Wonder Woman moments comes from the 2007 The Brave and the Bold series in issue number 7. While many people have spun this series of panels with their own reason for why Kara is so shocked at her answer to Wonder Woman's question, changing up just what that answer is, the real dialogue sees Kara handing back Wonder Woman's lasso of truth and while passing it over to her, answering Diana's question of, where she's off to next. Power Girl responds in the comic that she's off to go kill Superman, Superman, shocking both herself and Diana, and leaving her super embarrassed while Diana is convinced that something must be wrong with Power Girl. Perhaps she's brainwashed or she's possessed, as the lasso obviously compels those it touches to only tell the truth. So, I mean, she's gotta be telling the truth. Wow, what an embarrassing way to realize that that's going on.
Kicking off the list at number 10. She killed Maxwell Lord. Okay, it's one thing to kill an enemy, but to do it in front of thousands of people? I mean, do you have to? Wonder Woman issue 219 showed us a side to Wonder Woman that unfortunately had to come out. This issue was awesome. She handled Lord Maxwell and she wasn't playing around. Now at the time, Superman was a little off, and by off I mean under control by Maxwell himself. So he was a threat, and the two of them going at it was already intense enough. Something you don't want to see. Like Diana is pulling out some boss moves. At one point she says that every single strength can be turned into a weakness. And when he stops speaking, that's when I know he's using his ears. God forgive me, followed by a mighty huh, and just rocks his eardrums. Then she tries to shake Maxwell down using the lasso of truth, demanding to set Superman free from his grasp. He says, "Kill me," and she responds not with words, but with actions instead. And even Superman's like, whoa.
Number 9. Exposed a critical weakness. This one comes to us from one of the short stories included in the Wonder Woman 80th Anniversary 100-page Super Spectacular. The story is titled Dreamers, and it features a younger Diana who ends up, even as a kid, exposing a critical weakness in the Amazon's defenses for Doom's doorway. She ends up sneaking into the area with the help of Theo, the shark. Theo the shark, so great. Hoping to get a better understanding of secrets and responsibilities she'll inherit when she becomes queen. By the way, in case you forgot, Diana can communicate with animals in marine life. She can talk to Theo. She's basically like a more bad Disney princess. Successfully sneaking into the area, Diana comes across Nubia, who is tasked with guarding the doorway, and reprimands Diana for sneaking in. Though she also seems like a little bit impressed that Diana, being so young, was able to poke holes in the defenses of her much older and experienced sisters. Fortunately, Nubia's like, "Don't worry, I won't tell your mom, but I will have to tell her that hey, there's a hole here. We need to fix that. We need to tell these sharks to keep their mouths shut."
Number 8. Wonder Woman causing volcanoes to explode. I mean, that's pretty epic, but what about that time she made Captain Atom explode? If you drop a can of soda on the ground, it's ready to blow. You don't want to touch it. The last thing you want to do is puncture that can, or else you're gonna be sticky, and you're covered in bees. No one wants bees. In the Injustice storyline, we find Wonder Woman making a not so smart choice when it comes to handling Captain Atom. So he's about to rock Superman, right? And then Wonder Woman comes in and cuts his throat open with her sword. "Oh, you stupid," he says to Diana. "I have more power in me than 10 nuclear bombs, and you and your stupid magic sword have just breached the thing that contains it." And then he decides, this is my last opportunity anyway, screw it. Grabs Superman, and then takes Superman out to get an up-close and personal look at the light show. Nice. Number 7, Darkseid's powers. Sometimes you have a choice, and sometimes that choice is a lose-lose. These happen a lot in comic book movies, like Doctor Strange giving away the Time Stone to Thanos and then powering him up. It's a bad move, but it's better than the alternative still, because he saw the future, he knows. So in Wonder Woman's case, he was less of a problem this time around. So when Brainiac took control of Warworld in the Our Worlds at War storyline, specifically Wonder Woman issue 173, Wonder Woman gives away part of her soul in order to restore Darkseid's powers. Why the hell would she do that? To fight off the alien Imperiex? Yeah? Okay, I guess that's fine, that's fair. That's more than fair. I mean, after his powers are restored, they're able to stop Brainiac 13 and Imperiex. But you can't be juicing that guy up. I mean, of all people, not him. Number 6, ahead of the game. So one of the changes to reality that occurs during the Flashpoint event is when Wonder Woman and Aquaman get married. It's great. I mean, well, not really. Weddings are just fun, I guess, I don't know. I hear the song Shout and then I black out. It's so weird. This is the reality now where Bruce Wayne was killed and not his parents. So Superman is in a government lab having a not so relaxing time, and then we see Diana being saved by a sea monster from Aquaman. Ah, how lovely. A nice thing. Ah, yes. Classic Wonder Woman. Nothing like getting cheated on and then having your head cut off, adding injury to insult in this case. She then pops her crown off her severed head and then places it nicely on her own. And of course, a war follows between the Atlanteans and the Amazons, but comes to a lovely conclusion when Wonder Woman kills Aquaman by stabbing him in the back. Literally. Number 5, hung up on Trevor. Okay, so the Flashpoint paradox has a good chunk of not so pleasant moments. I mean, that's the whole point. Some things aren't meant to be changed, or else you risk opening the door to these nasty other realities. Like the one where Wonder Woman kills. A lot. So in the comics, we see Wonder Woman, rather Queen Diana at this point, send some Amazons to kill Steve Trevor, which alone, as I say that, just sounds terrible. But to make it even more list-worthy, the animated version is so much darker. Yikes. Okay, if we see this scene in the Flashpoint movie, I'll stand up and clap. I'll do it. I'll be like, yes, you guys, someone did it.
Number 4, Wonder Woman, God of War. Following 2011's Flashpoint event, DC rebooted the entirety of its continuity into the New 52. In the new Wonder Woman, the story of Hippolyta creating Diana from clay is revealed to actually be a lie, and Diana is actually a child of Zeus, and the whole clay bit was a cover story intended to keep Zeus's jealous wife Hera from killing her. Sometime later during her training, Diana became the secret protege of Ares, the god of war, only to have him drop her when she refused to kill for him. Years later, after Diana learned her true origin, she found herself embroiled in the power struggles of her Olympian kin. In the course of one adventure, she had to kill Ares, which made her the new god of war, and although she fought against the role for a while, as the battle against the monstrous firstborn of Zeus heated up, she stepped right into the job. Honestly, who knows what Wonder Woman creator William Marston would have made of this, given that he wrote her as this force of peace and this nemesis of the god of war. He might be happier with the events in DC Rebirth, which implies that the whole, Diana's New 52 adventures didn't actually happen.
Number 3, poking eyes and breaking arms. And in Justice Gods Among Us Year 4, there is a brutal showdown between Superman and Wonder Woman that is basically orchestrated by Batman. The two face off in a trial by combat style fight in order to settle a dispute, with Wonder Woman being forced to fight as she was nominated by Batman, even though she and Supes are kinda still technically on the same side here. However, this just means that in the end, Diana is able to use Clark's hesitancy to her advantage. She not only defeats Clark, but she does so brutally. At first it seems as though he'll come out victorious, but the fight ends with Diana clearly on top, attempting to gouge out his eyes before succeeding in breaking his arm. Youch. It's not easy to break a Kryptonian's arm, by the way. That is a lot.
Number 2, cut to the chase. With Wonder Woman 1984 getting the official go-ahead to release on HBO Max this holiday season, it's fair to look into some other run-ins with the two. One that's particularly notable, starting in Wonder Woman Volume 3, Issue 26. Titled Rise of the Olympian. So we see her interrogation skills bump up a notch when she crossed paths with Cheetah. So she decides to threaten her, of course by demanding Cheetah to tell her the location of Etta Candy. Or else she'll cut her tail off. That's crazy. That's like the superhero version of a mob boss taking a finger. That's so thug. And number 1, she left humanity behind. With time jumps and time heists, superhero flicks can bring up a lot of questions during the downtime in between these films. Like for example, Cap going back in time to be with Peggy. Wonderful, so sweet, may have even brought a tear out of my eye, maybe 2 tears, or 70 tears. But then you think of all the things that still happen in real life and you're like, really? Like he was there the whole time? I feel like he could have done something for I don't know, one of those horrible events. Now of course in doing so may just cause even worse things to happen, like we see with Barry Allen saving his mother, but then Wonder Woman hangs Steve Trevor, so it's like, This idea comes crawling back in now that we see Wonder Woman in modern day Justice League movies. She tells Bruce at the end of Dawn of Justice that men made a world where standing together is impossible, and left humanity for a century. I mean, again, I feel like you could have just stepped in, helped out with maybe, I don't know, World War II?
Number 10, Deadpool has a breakthrough. A breakthrough. Get it? You will. There have been a few times that Wolverine has shamed and embarrassed Deadpool, especially in combat. One such time, Deadpool was actually the one looking for a fight, and so Wolverine decided to oblige him. But he didn't just do that, he also gave him some pretty witty retorts as well. You see, Deadpool was made to believe that fighting Wolverine would help resolve some issues he has with his own past. And while Wolverine not only schooled him in combat, but also wisdom, at one point Deadpool asks Logan to dig deeper. Not knowing at the time what Wade is talking about at all, Wolverine responds with that deep enough murk as he stabs him through with his claws. Wolverine has always had some of the best mid-combat speeches and retorts. He also might have the mutant power of being able to leap and give you a whole speech during that one leap. Number 9. Namor gets beat in his own domain. Surprisingly, Wolverine has seemingly held his own against Namor more than once in the comics. One such time was when the two duked it out in Civil War. Their fight goes down in Wolverine's tie-in issues, mainly being featured in issue 45. Here, not only does Wolverine prove himself on land, but also in the sea, breaking into Atlantis and Namor's palace, and even managing to hold his own in combat against Namor's guards, fighting underwater. And Wolverine isn't usually the best at fighting underwater. He has an underwater suit of Iron Man's to aid him, but it doesn't seem to operate very smoothly for him. Despite this, he gets a few good hits in at Namor, punching him back for a joke that he made when he thought Wolverine was Iron Man about keeping Wolverine on a tighter leash. Yikes. In the end, Wolverine also proves himself to Namor, and despite their disagreement over who should get custody of the criminal Nitro, Namor meets him later at a bar to give Wolverine the information that he was looking for, which I think is pretty nice. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about more embarrassing moments that Wolverine has doled out, be sure to head on over to Facebook and click that like, because we are going to be putting up more content over there, and there'll be lots of good stuff for you in regards to Wolverine and other heroes. Number 8. Emma Frost's dirty secrets revealed. Dirty, dirty secrets. Actually, it's not that dirty. It's not that dirty of a secret in my mind, but you know. In this moment, it appeared to be, I guess, kind of dirty. During the first Civil War, Wolverine sets out on his own mission to capture Nitro, the one behind the start of the Civil War. Basically, the catalyst, if you will. He does this against the wishes of Cyclops and Emma Frost. When Emma and Cyke confront him about it in the 2003 Wolverine series in issue 46, the issue following the one with Namor, Emma threatens to basically mind wipe him back to a 3-year-old mental capacity. Wolverine responds by putting Emma in her place by 1, reminding her that the psi shields Professor X gave him protects him against her powers, and 2, by revealing that he knows she and Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, used to, team up. Well, Emma seems pretty shocked that Wolverine knows about this and is pretty embarrassed that he outed this previous relationship of hers to Scott. Her reaction is also interesting, as it's also during Civil War I, I believe, that she discloses that Scott does know of their relationship, of her relationship with Tony in the past, in a different comic. Although, you know, maybe this happened after that, but I do believe the issue where Emma brings it up is Civil War issue number 3, and I think that was released before this issue. But maybe the continuity in canon is different than the release order, or I just found a continuity error, and that's what that is. Number 7. Killed Jean Grey. Wolverine has done this on multiple occasions, and in one instance, kinda killed Jean on repeat, stuck on a loop of death after she refused to stay dead thanks to the resurrection powers of the Phoenix Force. Initially, Wolverine killed Jean out of mercy to save her from a gruesome death, burning up as they were in a space shuttle that was rapidly getting closer and closer to the sun. However, this death was actually quite helpful, as it allowed Jean to at least regenerate, unlocking her full potential as the Phoenix, which meant that she could actually then save them, so yay! And surprisingly, she also wasn't even mad about Wolverine killing her. Bonus! I'd be pretty mad, to be honest. I'd be like, wow, you just killed me. That's pretty shady, man. But I guess when you're like, but you unlocked my full potential, it's like, well, alright. Shortly thereafter, Jean would be killed permanently by Magneto, but years later would return again, only to have Wolverine, afraid of the potential of Dark Phoenix, along with the rest of the X-Men, kill her on repeat for a while by stabbing her through with his claws until he realized this wasn't exactly having the same effect that he'd hoped, as the Phoenix Force basically just kept rezzing Jean, so doesn't always work out. Still, that's a lot of Jean deaths. That is, I think, at least 9 Jean deaths total. I think 8 stabbies the one time, 1 stabby the other time. A lot of deaths. A lot of deaths without any actual death, actually, now that I think about it. Number 6. Cable and Bishop both get bested. I can't even believe that this happened. Cable is considered an Omega level mutant, and yet Wolverine was still able to take him down. And for reference, Wolverine is considered beta level when it comes to his abilities and his control over them more specifically. At least, I think he's still considered beta level. He's definitely not Omega level, I'll tell you that much. Granted, Wolverine did have some help here from Bishop, and does at least choose to spare Cable during their fight as part of the Executioner song story. You see, he thinks that Cable is actually the one they're looking for, but really it's his evil twin Strife. Wolverine isn't quite ready to kill him dead though, not knowing about Strife, but he does have a small amount of doubt that stays in his head. So he's like, I'm just gonna hold off, because even though I think it's you, we don't know for sure. You're making me doubt it. Then when Bishop attempts to finish the job, because he's like, no way, we just hunted this guy down, we fought him, that's it, Wolverine in turn shows up Bishop by slicing his gun to pieces so that he can't actually kill Cable with it, telling him to cool off before getting another gun off the rack and getting back to sorting out this whole mess with Cable's currently very suspicious appearance and self. Even though, like we said, it's Strife, but we didn't know that yet. Or well, Wolverine didn't know that yet, at least.
Coming in at number 5, we have the villainous Wolverine of an alternate future, Saberclaw. Hailing from Earth 982, this son of Wolverine and an unknown woman absolutely hates his original father, so much so that it seems to have literally changed him into appearing more reminiscent of Sabretooth than his actual dad. Wearing adamantium sheaths on his bone claws to make them even deadlier, Saberclaw was briefly a member of this universe's Sinister Six before eventually being convinced to put his differences aside with his father and help defend the world from the threat of Galactus and the daughter of Loki. Just another day in complicated comic book family dynamics.
Number 4. Cyclops is shamed. When Emma and Scott started seeing one another, Wolverine was pretty quick to embarrass them and shame them in front of the rest of the team. Mainly, he focused his ire on Scott, who he saw as betraying Jean's memory. And he wasn't alone either. By the way, at this point, Jean had recently died and Scott and Emma were together, but yeah, people all felt pretty weird about it. A lot of the other X-Men felt similarly, and they began to actually treat Scott differently because of his and Emma's relationship. This was because the two had started seeing one another psychically while Scott was still with Jean, but he and Marvel Girl, as she was formerly known, were having marital problems at the time. He had a psychic affair with Emma, and then after Jean died, immediately started just being in this very public relationship with her. Wolverine even went so far as to fight Scott physically over this blossoming relationship with Emma. Don't worry though, Jean's ghost would arrive to give Scott the green light so we could all feel better about the whole thing. Jean's ghost always coming back to be like, look, everyone just be cool. I'm Jean's ghost, I am like a god. Number 3, killed the mongrels. These last few spots are definitely all competitors for the number 1 spot on this list in my opinion. This one is especially bad because the mongrels were actually Wolverine's children, although he didn't know it at the time that he was forced to fight them. They were rounded up by his known son with Itsu, Daken. Daken was working with the Red Right Hand, a group who had a personal vendetta against Wolverine. Daken created the team known as the Mongrels, not even really to defeat Wolverine, despite Daken having trained them himself. It was kind of like a win-win situation for him. Either Wolverine would be killed by the children he didn't know or had forgotten he'd sired over the years, or Wolverine would end up killing them all. The latter was kind of how it went down, and when Wolverine learned that the members of the Mongrels had actually all been his children, and he didn't know that, he was pretty heartbroken. So I guess point 1 for Red Right Hand and Daken. Only sad points for Wolverine. No points for the Mongrels because they died. Number 2, Spider-Man gets hit where it hurts. In the heart. You can tell that this was a moment that really was upsetting to Peter Parker's Spider-Man because of how he reacts to it. At one point when both Wolverine and Spider-Man are staying in Avengers Tower, Pete and MJ, who is also there with Peter, have a kind of a relationship scandal. A news story is basically being spread around that MJ, who is still married to Peter at the time, is having an affair with Tony Stark. While Peter is distraught about this, Wolverine takes the opportunity to make a joke at MJ's expense and at the expense of her and Peter's relationship. He says, and I quote, "Sweet Cheeks messed up big time. It's not your fault she screwed up. I mean, if she had brains to go with all that beauty, she wouldn't be with you in the first place, right?" Ouch! Peter of course reacts by pushing Wolverine so hard that he goes flying through and out of a ceiling to floor window in the high-rise that was supposed to be made of unbreakable glass. So you can tell that one probably cut real deep for Peter. Whew. Number 1, the X-Force are defeated. The defeat of Shatterstar was just the beginning for the X-Force, unfortunately, in Executioner's song. Shortly thereafter, they would also be tracked down by Wolverine and taken out primarily by him and Psylocke, forced to surrender to the Blue X-Men and X-Factor teams. And they were backed into a corner fairly easily, I gotta say, with Wolverine choosing to hunt them down and citing it as one of the things he is best known for, which obviously here he proves he is best known for it. He's pretty good at hunting people down. Although I imagine X-Force, like the other teams, also felt pretty conflicted about this whole fight against their friends, so this combined with Wolverine's ruthlessness probably helped to convince them in surrendering. Still, pretty embarrassing that basically Wolverine and Psylocke show up and they're like, hey, we're just gonna do this, and then everyone comes in at the end to be like, yeah, we're here too.
Coming in at number 10, we've got a video game honorable mention with the Wolverine symbiote from the game Spider-Man: Web of Shadows. In this title's storyline, Wolverine has traveled to New York City to deal with a growing symbiote infestation, and even briefly fights Spider-Man when he believes the wall crawler is actually Venom. Unfortunately for Wolverine, he finds himself overwhelmed by actual symbiotes on top of a church and attacks Spider-Man again as the Wolverine symbiote. With all of his usual healing abilities on top of all the symbiote enhancements that the alien parasites offer, this version of Wolverine might just be one of the grossest versions we've ever gotten to see. Coming in at number 9, we have the brainwashed Wolverine of Earth 14850. At one point in the regular Marvel universe, Wolverine was captured and brainwashed by Hydra in order to assassinate the Avengers, but luckily was able to be deprogrammed before he did any real damage. On this alternate Earth, however, the deprogramming never took place, and Wolverine's killing spree of superpowered heroes was able to last for months. Armed with all of his incredible abilities, absolutely no remorse, and the addition of Hydra-developed teleporting technology that nullified even Wolverine's usual weaknesses, and this was a horrifying enemy that even the Avengers couldn't handle. Coming in at number 8, we've got a live-action detour with X-24 from the 2017 film Logan. An allegedly perfect clone of Wolverine, but with none of the compassion or humanity, X-24 was treated like an attack dog and followed the orders of Xander Rice to hunt down and capture the real Wolverine and the young mutant girl he was protecting. Based on Wolverine during his prime years, he was able to physically overcome the true Wolverine and was only able to be defeated at the last minute by a bullet made of pure adamantium right to the skull.
Number 7, is Hulk really the strongest there is? Yes, he still is, I think. He is the strongest there is. But he's not always the smartest, as is proven here in this fight against Wolverine from Incredible Hulk issue 340. Now it should be noted that in this fight, Wolverine is actually taking on the Grey Hulk, which isn't known for being one of the strongest personas or versions of the Hulk. But still, the impressive part here isn't so much even Wolverine's skill and strength as a fighter, although you're likely to be impressed by that somewhat still if you're so inclined, but the smarts and character development we see Wolverine display here. Wolverine accidentally picks a fight with Hulk by insulting him, unintentionally. Hulk responds by attempting to attack Wolverine, who manages to get the first slash and kind of dodge in successfully, but then decides to take the higher road and actually chooses to apologize to the Hulk, not wanting to fight him and attempting to fight against his own internal animalistic desire and instincts to do so. When Hulk refuses to let him go and says, "I've gotten smarter and you've gotten gutless," Wolverine replied with, "Knowing when to fight and when to walk away is more smarts than you'll ever have." Yeah, I like that. Such a good Wolverine line to Hulk. Like, I'm just like, whoo! Ouch, you're gonna need some ice for that burn, Hulk.
Coming in at number 6, we have the infamous zombie Wolverine. Many superheroes and villains of the Marvel Universe found themselves infected with an undead plague on the alternate world of Earth 2149, but Wolverine might be the character who experienced the oddest side effects from becoming a member of the Zombie Legion. Initially fighting alongside Magneto to help defeat the undead threat with the X-Men, Wolverine was eventually bitten and overwhelmed while attempting to defend Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s main base of operations. Turning against Magneto, this version of Wolverine slowly discovered his healing factor was affected by his zombification, meaning his arms could no longer support the adamantium claws throughout his body. Attacking any living thing he could with the shreds that remained of his limbs, this version of Wolverine would go on to even consume Galactus, becoming a cosmic undead threat to the rest of this very doomed Marvel Universe.
Number 5, actually killed innocents. Other than Jamie, who Wolverine seemingly almost had killed but then ultimately did not have killed, and the countless other baddies that Wolverine has faced and defeated over the years, there are also other youngsters that Wolverine has been forced to take down. One of the worst moments where Wolverine has been forced to eliminate a youth happens actually outside of the main continuity in the Ultimate Universe, the reality of Earth 1610. Here, Wolverine is sent on a mission to do the X-Men's dirty work by taking out a young mutant who threatens the very rights mutants are basically fighting for. The sad part? Really isn't this kid's fault. His mutant power simply manifested without him knowing and caused him to accidentally vaporize the entire residents of his town, including seemingly his high school crush or his girlfriend or sweetheart and his parents. So really feels pretty bad. And you're like, wow, Wolverine, really, wow, that's what you're doing? But he's like, hey, I gotta protect the mutants or something by killing a mutant or something. Seems a little shady, the reasoning there.
Coming in at number 4, we have Daken, the dark son of Wolverine. Named after the Japanese term for mongrel dog, Daken is the tragic child that Wolverine never knew about, his mother being murdered before Wolverine even knew he had a kid. Cut from his mother's body, Daken was raised to hate his father, and in their very first encounter, slashed open his stomach and left him to die. With the same incredible healing abilities and bone claws as his dad, Daken has had a long road of trying to find his proper place in the world and has fought on the sides of both good and evil over the course of his tragic life, but hopefully he'll stay more on the side of good going forward.
Number 3, Shatterstar gets shattered. That's right, Wolverine pretty much completely embarrassed and obliterated Shatterstar in the Executioner's Song story. While Shatterstar did seem to miraculously survive here, Wolverine gave him a fistful of claws, not only embarrassing Shatterstar, but also leaving Richter pretty distraught amidst the loss of his most dearest friend. Even back in the 90s, the feelings were pretty strong between Richter and Shatterstar, as is evident here, and in many of the comics. This all went down in an epic fight between various X-teams, including a split-up X-Men roster into 2 separate teams, Blue and Gold, and X-Factor besides. Wolverine is quick to jump into action, and Shatterstar doesn't even get to show off his own impressive fighting skills much before Wolverine turns him into a shish kebab. For someone who is known for being a proud warrior, this whole display, I imagine, would be pretty disappointing for Shatterstar. While he didn't physically die from his injury here, he may have died of embarrassment.
Coming in at number 2, we have the Wolverine from the Age of Apocalypse universe. In an alternate world where Charles Xavier is dead and Magneto is leader of the X-Men, Wolverine is a brutal warrior named Weapon X who has to be constantly subdued by the psychic abilities of Jean Grey in order to be a functioning member of the X-Men team. Eventually losing a hand while going on a suicide mission to rescue this version of Jean from a version of Cyclops, this version of Wolverine for a time had heroic ambitions, but gave them up after being granted the power of the Celestials and turned into Weapon Omega, now determined to bring about the evolutionary future that he'd initially stopped the mutant apocalypse from achieving and declaring war against all of humanity. This new Weapon Omega is the farthest thing possible from Wolverine's usual heroics. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Brother Mutant, an evil variant of Wolverine combined with some of his greatest allies and greatest foes. On Earth 127, a male variant of the Scarlet Witch, known as the Scarlet Warlock, attempted to cast a spell that would transfer Wolverine's adamantium skeleton to Magneto, thus giving Magneto an incredible power boost given his magnetic abilities. However, something with the spell went wrong, and the Scarlet Warlock, Wolverine, Magneto, Quicksilver, and the villain Mesmero were all merged into a singular being known as Brother Mutant. All 5 of these mutants' powers combined into one villainous figure, Brother Mutant was such a powerful threat that a multiversal team of other, more heroic Wolverines had to be assembled specifically to stop him, just to ensure that all of that power wasn't unleashed on the rest of the Marvel multiverse.
And at 10, prosecutes Lois. In issues 99 and 100 of Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane, we see Lois be charged with the murder of Lana Lang. Lois gets into an argument with Lana Lang when they were secretly both invited to a talk show in Gotham City to talk about how much they know Superman during Superman Appreciation Day. I don't know why they're celebrating Superman in Gotham since he hardly did there, but whatever. But on the drive home, Lois and Lana get into a car crash, but only Lois makes it out alive. Batman ends up defending her in court for some reason. I really don't know why. I doubt he passed the bar. But with Batman defending her, the DA's office figures that the only man who can defeat Batman in court is Superman. Thus, he becomes a special prosecutor and prosecutes the love of his life. I mean, he was like forced to do it, but still, what the actual hell is going on with the series? And at 9, faked Clark Kent's death. Jesus, there's a lot wrong with this number already, and we're only at number 10. Oh boy, this is bound to be a fun list. Starting off, Superman wasn't really a good person. He was nowhere near the perfect cookie cutter guy that we know today. He was actually quite toxic to Lois when things first started. Case in point, Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane. This 137 issue story features a lot of questionable moments, but one of these things is when Lois Lane disguised herself as the French actress Lois LaFlamme so that she could get close to a foreign dignitary for an interview. Superman decides that he has to teach her a lesson for using such tactics in the pursuit of a story, so he falls for Lois LaFlamme as Clark Kent. When she rejects his marriage proposal, he pretends to kill himself right in front of her by jumping off a building just to make Lois feel bad. Although he claims that he's doing it as well because he needs to change into his Superman costume in midair because one of the rooms in the hotel they were on was robbed that day, but I think we all know the only reason why he did it. And it ain't killed Lois. While the classic "Oh, Superman killed Lois" scene is typically pulled from the Injustice series, where Supes is tricked into killing that Lois and their unborn son by thinking they're actually Doomsday thanks to a special breed of Joker gas, I'd rather talk about the other time Lois gets killed because of Superman. By getting her pregnant. Yeah, that's right. You thought Spider-Man was the only one who had issues getting women pregnant with his radioactive swimmers? Well, the Man of Steel and the Woman of Kleenex are certainly not as good a match as some may think, considering how in Adventures of Superman Annual number 3, Lois gets pregnant and is then killed by the baby after getting a superpowered Kryptonian kick from inside the womb. Or at the very least a future version of her does, which either way is still messed up as hell. Even if he didn't think it would happen, I mean, like, you kinda need to expect something like that. To be fair, the baby had also not really been exposed to the sun directly, so maybe he shouldn't have had powers to begin with, but I mean, like, couldn't they just have kept Lois in like a chamber with a red sun or something? I mean, I don't know, there were ways to avoid it. And it's 7, Justice Lord. For much of his life, Justice Lord's Superman background matched the Justice League counterpart, until President Lex Luthor executed the Flash. Soon after that, Superman stormed the White House, while his comrades battled the Secret Service. And as they were doing that, Superman confronted President Luthor in the Oval Office. Despite Superman's accusations of corruption and abuse of power, Luthor refused to surrender and arrogantly stated that he would find a way to get out of prison. Or at least avoid being prosecuted to begin with. Superman declared that if being a hero meant that this feuding and fighting had to continue, then he was done with it, and then used his heat vision to execute the president on the spot, Shazam style. After President Luthor's assassination, the Justice Lords spent the next 2 years imposing their brand of peace on the Earth through harsh rule. Justice Lord Superman himself continued to use his heat vision to lobotomize all of Earth's criminals and supervillains. As a result, all of them became harmless, walking vegetables who obediently inhabited the world's prisons. Which, I mean, like, is a little tamer than some versions of Superman. Like, lobotomy or death. Honestly, I don't know which would be considered more evil. And at 6, Eviction. In Superman's 8th ever appearance in Action Comics number 8, he didn't seem to really have a grip on the whole how to be a good guy thing. Since after a group of kids commits a crime to join a gang, Superman takes the gang out thinking that it will save the kids. But they don't want to reform, they just want to keep being bad. Probably because the whole like, the gang is the only people who care about me kind of thing or something like that, right? That's usually the line. Well, want to know how Superman fixes that? Not by sending them to jail or getting the cops to take him for some kind of scared straight thing. No, he instead gets an idea from a hurricane and starts tearing the poor neighborhood apart. Yeah, thinking that when he's done, the town will be rid of its quote, filthy crime-festering slums. I mean, I guess it kinda worked in a way, since the government ends up rebuilding modern apartment units there that are definitely too expensive for the previous residents. So the crime does leave because the people have to leave as well. Huh.
Number 5, Super Doom. After a trip to Tibet, Clark, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen built a machine that used vibrations to bring thoughts into reality, and the best possible use for it in their eyes was to create a Superman that was a thought-powered redeemer capable of saving the world. Unfortunately, they ended up having to sell the machine to Overcorp, and Overcorp took their Superman idea and twisted it so much that the brutal and toxic Super Doom was born. A self-described killer franchise, Super Doom wasted no time in becoming the preeminent superhuman of its world, and sought out to eliminate any form of competition, meaning he was on the hunt for other Supermen. After ravaging countless parallel planets and butchering numerous Superman and Superman-like adjacent people, it finally tracked down its creators to Earth 23, where it killed Jimmy and mortally wounded Clark. Later, Super Doom was summoned to Prime Earth by an unwilling Lex Luthor as a final doomsday weapon against Superman, and after a brutal struggle, Superman overcame the monster, which, upon defeat, transformed into a bomb that Superman managed to place on the dark side of the moon before detonation, seemingly annihilating Super Doom once and for all. Give the story a read for yourself, starting with 2012's Action Comics Volume 2, number 9.
And at 4, World War II propaganda. When World War II was ongoing, a load of the population turned to superheroes to provide hope. This is where we got Captain America and more. But this also turned Superman into the noble American hero that we know him for today. However, that caused him to be a little more on the prejudice side of things in his material. It was mostly to encourage able-bodied men to enlist and others to buy war bonds to fund their soldiers. But my question is, why did you have to lean so hard into the whole race thing? Really, DC? Like, Superman was literally printing posters that said things like, Superman says you can slap a Japanese soldier with war bonds and stamps, with a very stereotypical drawing on them as well as some offensive slurs. So yeah, that's pretty messed up. They also did this to avoid having Superman just like straight up end the war, because like, let's be honest, if he was fighting, there would be no war. They came up with various excuses for it too, like Clark Kent accidentally using his X-ray vision to read the wrong eye chart while trying to enlist, resulting in him being rejected. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Ultraman. A member of the crime syndicate, an evil version of the Justice League that terrorized its Earth, that being Earth 3, Ultraman is basically the opposite to Superman. His real name, well, his real human name, is Clark Luthor, and is the adopted son of Lionel Luthor from Earth 2. Ultraman is Kal-El, with 2 L's, who comes from a version of Krypton whose people are mean-spirited and selfish. Unlike other incarnations, they gain power when exposed to green kryptonite. Just before his Krypton was destroyed, Kal-El's parents, Jor-El and Lara, sent him to Earth 3 to one day seek vengeance against the being that destroyed Krypton, teaching him to become the strongest being on the planet or to become nothing at all. Upon his arrival on Earth 3, the young Kal-El coerced a couple of young alcoholic substance addicts, Johnny and Martha Kent, to adopt him, only to murder them years later once he no longer needed them. He went on to found the crime syndicate and take over the world. This guy is a homicidal, violent megalomaniac with mommy and daddy issues. However, he's definitely a character I want to see on the big screen. Please. Penultimately, and at number 2, Executioner. Nowadays, Superman doesn't really kill, aside from a few moments, Man of Steel and Injustice most notably. However, there wasn't really an origin for this moral code. We just kind of assumed that he was a good guy that didn't want to kill. However, writer John Byrne wanted to answer that unasked question in Superman number 22, one of the most controversial Superman stories ever. In this issue, Superman finds himself in a pocket dimension where a group of 3 Kryptonian soldiers had wiped out all life on Earth, with the exception of Bruce Wayne, Lex Luthor, and a synthetic life form that was calling itself Supergirl. They try to fight the criminals, but they're not really a match for them, which results in Supes taking some unexpected actions. He exposes the group, which also included an alternate reality version of General Zod, to golden kryptonite of their world, resulting in them permanently losing their powers, and him keeping his since it wasn't kryptonite from his world, it was from their pocket dimension. But Zod still threatens Superman and says that he'll track him down and destroy his Earth, even though he literally has no powers. But instead of just abandoning them on a dead planet, Supes thinks that that's not enough, so then he kills them with kryptonite. However, he is still grief-stricken and then promises that he will never kill again. My question is, why'd you have to pull out the green kryptonite? You already took away their powers. Couldn't you just have like... Finally, and at number 1, ruled the world. Oh boy. Usually when people talk about ruling the world and Superman, they talk about Injustice again. And while this is a great story and an example of what can go wrong with superheroes, the story of King of the World is also a good cautionary tale about Superman. In the late 90s, this story featured a series of prophetic dreams that make Superman realize that his regular MO, just flying around and waiting for disasters to happen, isn't really working. And Kal-El decides to be a little more proactive. However, to him that means building a series of spy satellites to survey Earth, helping Superman keep track of everything that's happening at once, all over the globe, and giving up his life as Clark Kent to work as Superman full-time. Sleep deprived and losing his grip on humanity, as well as his sanity, Superman starts to interfere more and more with Earth's affairs, toppling extremist governments and even changing the weather. But when he realizes that he can't be everywhere at once because, you know, it's the whole world, the Man of Steel deploys an army of Superman robots to help maintain law and order, effectively making Superman a benevolent dictator. Only snapping out of it when he gets a kiss from Lois Lane. This is what happened, okay? This is what No Nut November will do to the weak-minded, okay? Superman wouldn't stand a chance. Also, I find it funny how he made flying robots, because the Man of Steel made Men of Steel.
Number 10, Red Sun Superman. Answer me this, have you ever wondered what would happen if Superman didn't have that good and wholesome upbringing and was raised somewhere else? Like, I don't know, let's say the Soviet Union? Well, wonder no longer, because that is exactly what happens in the comic book miniseries Superman Red Sun. Instead of his ship crash landing in Kansas, Superman lands in the Ukraine in the middle of the Cold War. In the story, Superman is raised with the ideals that the Soviet Union instills in him, and the world feels a sense of fear as a superpowered alien is the Soviets' new secret weapon. He still has all the powers you associate with Superman because he is still exposed to the yellow sun. With the passion and sense of justice we've come to expect from Superman, Soviet Superman was so dedicated to his country, which made him incredibly dangerous for the wrong reasons, because he was a living weapon that the Soviets used to spread their power throughout the globe. Over the course of about 20 years, he traveled the world with Wonder Woman, converting other nations and even becoming their new leader. He was a good leader, don't get me wrong, because he is still Superman, it was just for a very bad world. Highly recommend you check out this alternate Superman for yourself, starting with 2003's Superman Red Sun Volume 1, Number 1. Number 9. Ultraman. Similar to our Superman's origin story, this iteration was sent from the planet Krypton to Earth 3. However, it's not really stated why, since Krypton didn't explode in this universe. On his way to Earth 3, he first came into contact with kryptonite, which started the change in his body that turned him into the superpowered powerhouse that we know. And since then, every time he came in contact with kryptonite, he only grew stronger. After becoming an adult, he renamed himself Ultraman, and this is where he vastly differs from our Superman because he became a brutal authoritarian and ruthlessly rules his version of the Justice League called the Crime Syndicate, conquering most of the world with their help. After largely conquering most of the world, Ultraman developed a new type of supervision that allowed him to see into the Earth 1 dimension. Seeking an open battle to test their powers after defeating the military forces of their native Earth 3, the Crime Syndicate challenged the combined forces of the Earth 1 Justice League of America and Earth 2 Justice Society of America. Not able to withstand the combined might of two Earth's greatest super beings, the Crime Syndicate was defeated and imprisoned in an extra-dimensional bubble created by the Earth 1 Green Lantern. Ultraman is a perfect example of someone who has all the power but isn't happy. Hailing from an Earth where evil always wins, Ultraman is always looking for something new to conquer, torment, or honestly both. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1964's Justice League of America number 29. Number 8. Overman. Hailing from Earth 10, a universe where the Germans won World War II, we have Overman, the leader of the new Reichman and the Superman of this Earth. Kal-El was sent to Earth 10 as a baby in a ship away from the planet Krypton because it was dying. Pretty standard Superman origin, however, much like the Red Sun Superman, he was raised by the wrong people. Alongside the German forces, Overman conquered the world in, I want to say, less than 20 years, after which he decided to leave the Earth for a while. 3 years later, he returned with a clear head and saw all the damage he helped cause and became an advocate against all of what he once stood for, while still working alongside them for some reason. Eventually, German scientists used Kal-Cells to create a clone of him known as Overgirl that Overman learned to love like family. However, she died not too long after her creation, and that hit him hard. Inconsolable and grief-stricken, Overman leaked some precious information to the freedom fighters that resulted in the demise of the new Reichman and Metropolis. Check out probably one of the saddest Superman stories I've ever heard of, starting with 2015's The Multiversity Guidebook number 1.
And at 7, desecrates Lois's grave. Yeah, that's not even the worst part about this issue, it gets worse. After finding out that Lois is going to die from their baby, Superman tried to kill himself by flying into space as far as he could from Earth. But when he does, he meets an alien warrior princess named Maxima, who he then proceeds to hook up with on Lois's grave. Which is probably the most disrespectful thing you can do on your former lover's grave, I'd think. Especially when the headstone has a line from you that reads "There can only be you," and a wreath that you had left presumably earlier that day, at least. Or if not, earlier that week. But like, yeah. That's probably one of the most problematic covers ever that features Superman, especially at the point that it was released. I'm sure that there's been problematic things since, but
Number 6. Black Zero. This is actually the third Black Zero. This was an alternate version of Superboy known as Superman 2 from a hyper time stream in which Superman had not returned to life and his clone had been left to fully mature and develop his full Kryptonian powers in addition to some tactile telekinesis. With this new power, he could create a field around himself that made him invulnerable, allowed him to fly, and also move heavy objects, similar to Superman's strength. Superman 2 tried to fight crime, but ended up losing a battle that cost its life, leading to a backlash against human cloning. He decided to rename himself after the pro-cloning organization on Krypton, Black Zero, and fight for clone rights. He used Project Cadmus to kill off most of the world's superheroes and recreated most of them as clones of the originals, but that wasn't enough for him. He entered Hypertime, a cross between a time stream and the multiverse during an era where DC Comics only consisted of one universe, to travel to other realities to fight for clone rights as well. Black Zero was a fanatical and ruthless ruthless warrior who was eventually and thankfully stopped by the combined strength of numerous Superboys from across Hypertime. Appearing across only a few issues, this is a short story that is definitely worth a read, so if you feel like it, check out 1999 Superboy Volume 4, number 61 to 64.
Halfway through into number 5, Red Sun Superman. The Russian hero known as Superman is an alternate version of the hero we know now, from an alternate reality in which baby Kal-El landed not in Smallville but rather in Soviet Russia, where he was raised by the government. This Superman, while still a hero to Russia, is antithetical to the United States and has defeated some American heroes such as the Green Lantern. His arch nemesis though is still Lex Luthor, who at this point is a scientist employed by the US government to create heroes like Superman. Luthor's copied version of Superman, however, proves a failure and endangers more lives. Bizarro. Luthor created many monsters to battle Superman, but they all didn't really do anything. This version is just scary because, like, it's what every American fears. Communism. And honestly, with some of the other characters on this list and what they did to the human race, on this earth, I'm surprised that Russia hasn't used Superman to just destroy everything. Like, whatever. However, this story is a good lesson about who you keep in your life and how people around you affect who you turn out to be. So, there's that, at least.
Number 4, Superman Earth 1198. In Superman the Dark Side, the baby Kal-El ship is diverted on its path to Earth and instead lands on the planet Apokolips, home of the Overlord Darkseid. In this version of Superman, Darkseid is the one to raise him, and Superman becomes his loyal and devoted disciple and helps him in the destruction of New Genesis. As well as this, Superman doesn't grow up to wear tights and a cape, instead he opts for a menacing black and red armor with a lightning bolt S across his chest. Not only is this Superman powerful, evil, and terrifying, he also has a thing for weapons, using the Apocalypsean sword and Omega Warhead, as well as anything he can get his hands on. Superman in this story is more of a pawn for Darkseid than inherently evil, but much like the others, his actions have horrific consequences. With his direct and indirect help, Darkseid managed to extract the anti-life equation from Superman's cells and subjugated the world and expanded his reach. With Earth by his side and a yellow sun to power him up, Superman was forced to fight Darkseid to end his reign of terror. Highly recommend you check out this 3-issue run for yourself, starting with 1998 Superman Darkseid number 1.
Getting close to the end, into number 3, made a film with his friend's wife. A lot of people make fun of the adult film industry, okay? But honestly, it's the backbone of the economy, at least in some cases. However, Superman has never shied away from helping small business owners, especially in Action Comics number 592 and 593. That's right, before Kim K had her go at it, Superman tried the whole celebrity tape thing, with the help of a character named Sleaze, one of Darkseid's former enforcers. Superman tracks down a missing new god, Big Barda, to Metropolis' roughest neighborhood, the Suicide Slum. There, Superman discovers that not only has Barda been brainwashed by Sleaze, but the Apocalypse native is using her to produce a line of popular adult films. Superman tries to rescue her, but ultimately falls under Sleaze's control as well, and Sleaze does exactly what you would expect. He becomes sleazy. He takes Barda and Superman to the local videographer and makes some naughty videos. Then her husband walks in. It's certainly an interesting couple issues.
Number 2, Lord Superman. This alternate Superman doesn't have any roots with comics. He is actually from the Justice League TV series, specifically 2003's episode A Better World, and is one of the first Dark Superman that we've seen in the animated universe. This Superman lost his way in battle with President Lex Luthor after Luthor executed the Flash in front of him, and mocked the Man of Steel for never being able to see things through to their logical conclusion. Superman, overcome with rage, executed Luthor with his heat vision, took over the world with his Justice League's help, and formed the Justice Lord's crime-free regiment. They saw themselves as the world's saviors, and the Terror was a small price to pay to realize their vision. Of course, when they found an alternate Earth, they immediately imagined all the quote-unquote good they could have done there, and Lord Superman's incredible powers would have let him succeed on this new Earth if it weren't for the regular Superman, who managed to defeat the Justice Lord before it was too late. I think the worst thing about Justice Lord Superman is that he truly thought he was doing the right thing, but we all know for a fact that he wasn't. Check out this 2-part episode for yourself and let me know what you think in the comments below. And finally, number 1, Injustice Superman. Before I dive more into this one, I have to say that I love the Injustice games so much. I remember when I first got the game and I did not put it down until I was finished with the story, so comment below who your go-to character is. In Injustice 1, I'd have to say mine is either Nightwing or Batman, but in Injustice 2, it has to be Green Arrow or Scarecrow. Anyways, sorry about that, let's talk about Injustice Superman. In a storyline amalgamated from diverse comic plots along with the Justice League animated two-parter, A Better World, that I just talked about, the Joker sadistically fear-gasses Superman into killing Lois Lane. Superman responds by putting his open hands straight through the clown's chest and turns the world into a dictatorship-like police state. In the process, he doxes Batman, murders Shazam and Martian Manhunter, converts the Justice League into his personal secret police, and gets his butt kicked by Alfred Pennyworth. He's finally defeated by a still good Superman from another universe who encases him in a red sunlight generating capsule. Now, there have been a few storylines over the years that have revolved around the idea of what would happen if Superman went bad and whether anyone could stop him, and this just proves that the only man who can take down Superman is Superman himself. Why not play the games again for yourself to refresh your memory, or check out 2013's Injustice Gods Among Us #1.
And a 10 tangent. The Superman of Earth Tangent was originally a human named Harvey Dent, who gained superpowers through a freak accident. He became one of the top superheroes, however, after defeating Ultra Humanite, who on this Earth was created by a US government super soldier project. He became too powerful to be controlled and then threatened to destroy the world. Yeah. But after the death of Superman's wife, he became dark and vengeful, taking over the world. While he protected the world from crime, he was still tyrannical, not allowing any freedom of thought. And this is where the story of Tangent Superman's reign begins. I don't know why Superman is so codependent on Lois, or whoever his wife ends up being, because like, whenever he loses his wife, he ends up going berserk. Like, bro, you literally just, like, you lost your whole planet. I think, like, one death, even if it is the love of your life, isn't gonna be that much. I mean, this version didn't lose his home planet, but, like, still. Other versions in this list, you get it. And at 9, Subject B-Zero. Subject B-Zero, also known as the Monster, was a creation of Lex Luthor, presumably used to combat Superman, but was taken out of stasis early to help combat Ultraman and the Crime Syndicate. Despite being the creation of Luthor, B-Zero had a gentle heart and simply wished to enjoy the beauty of life and to make his father proud. Although imbued with Kryptonian-like powers, B-Zero was easily overpowered and killed by Ultraman, much to the grief of his father, who actually grew to love him. So while not an evil version of Superman, you have to admit, if this guy was running at you, you'd be pretty damn terrified. Like, bro, get some skin cream, some moisturizer. You look like a rock gnome named Deborah Mustard. Come on. Next thing you know, you're gonna try to control me with one word and then make me a little robot trinket that's gonna get stolen by a goblin who only wants to eat pigeons. And look, you may not understand that reference, but if you do, we're friends now, okay? And at 8, Bizarro. The original Bizarro was created when Superman was exposed to a duplicate ray, in accordance with the science fiction concepts of Superman's stories of the there was a lot of sci-fi going on with Superman. However, Bizarro relocated to the Bizarro world, a cuboidal planet called Hatre, which is just Earth backwards, don't really know how to pronounce it, but it operated under Bizarro logic. So like, it was a crime to do anything good, and basically since Bizarro was the invert of Superman, that Earth was also populated by inverts of other DC characters. The 1986 event Crisis on Infinite Earths, though, rewrote DC's continuity, eliminating that Earth. Since then, 2 different Bizarro characters have appeared. One of them was a flawed clone created by Lex Luthor, and the second, the longer-lasting Bizarro, was an idea of the Batman villain the Joker, brought to life by the cosmic trickster Mr. Mxyzptlk. He was first introduced in Superboy number 68 from 1958, though, and is even one of the coolest Superman versions there is, even if he's not always like actually Superman and rather like an experiment, but like whatever.
Number 7, the Eradicator. Existing on New Earth, the Eradicator was an ancient Kryptonian weapon merged with a human body to form the last son of Krypton, an extreme vigilante who surfaced after the death of Superman. The Eradicator was given to Superman while on Warworld, and it began its work again on Earth, creating the Fortress of Solitude and trying to manipulate Superman into becoming the ideal Kryptonian. When it failed, the Eradicator created a new body for itself based on Superman. The Eradicator had all of Superman's memories, even though it wasn't actually the real Superman, but was far more brutal and violent. It didn't actually have the power to absorb solar radiation, so it relied on Superman's body to transfer energy to it. Over the years, it became more compassionate and even fought alongside Superman in a few fights, the most notable being their fight against Cyborg Superman, and even sacrificed itself to save Earth, but it always remained dedicated to preserving Superman and Kryptonian life. In DC's Rebirth continuity, the Eradicator has returned and it's just as dangerous as ever, so why not take a look at the Superman Superman clone story for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1989's Action Comics Annual number 2 all the way to 2011's Action Comics number 901.
In its sixth kingdom comes Superman. Yet another world where Lois Lane dies. Except this time it's directly at the hands of the Joker, who had flooded the Daily Planet with his toxin, killing everyone but Lois, who had managed to locate a gas mask. When trying to attack the Joker, however, Joker just turns around and cracks her right in the skull. Superman returns as Lois succumbs to her injuries and dies. And as for the Joker, he arrives for his trial, but he's killed by a new superhero going by Magog. However, Magog ends up getting acquitted of his charges after killing the Joker, which honestly, I understand, but Superman is appalled by the public embracing a killer as a hero. Already disheartened at the death of Lois, Kal-El abandons his life as Superman and retreats to his Fortress of Solitude, where he spends the next decade. Superman eventually returns and reforms the Justice League, though, with the goal of capturing heroes who took Magog's example and started killing, which results in many a battle and a nuke targeted towards metahuman genes, a la Invasion, the CW crossover. But in the end, Superman does end up dating Wonder Woman and they end up expecting a child. I mean, like, it took you a while, but you got over it. Attaboy. Halfway through into number 5, Exposed Batman. While this seems like something that any version of Superman would do if they turned bad, it's actually interesting to see that only the Injustice version of Superman did it. Yeah, after getting fed up with Batman leading the resistance against his totalitarian regime, Superman tells the world that Batman is really Bruce Wayne. How does he do this, you ask? Like a press conference, or like a worldwide news message or video maybe? Nope, none of the above. This dude frickin' outs him on Twitter. Superman, in just 4 simple words, tells the world that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Using those 4 words, actually. From the official Superman Twitter account, by the way. Dude doesn't even use his Clark Kent Twitter. Man, he's still hiding behind his identity, but then decides to out Bruce's. It's a damn shame. With over 2.5 million retweets and over 3.5 million favorites, this was certainly number 1 on trending for sure. At least until Kim K posted a pic in like a Batman costume to capitalize on the news, pushing the actual Bruce Wayne as Batman thing to number 2 on trending. That's probably what would have happened. Let's be honest. And at 4, Reverse Flashpoint Superman. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse 1 Flashpoint, we see a world where Barry died when trying to get his speed back with Thomas Wayne after creating Flashpoint. This leads to Reverse Flash claiming to be the Flash and then trying to get the war with the Atlanteans and Amazons to stop by threatening them. Obviously, this doesn't work out so well. So in an effort to save himself, Reverse Flash races through time, changing the events to create the world exactly how he wants it, with Barry not being able to stop him. Which involves saving not only Bruce Wayne, but Martha and Thomas Wayne as well, resulting in a world without a Batman. On the final page of the issue, we see Eobard with all the new heroes he ended up creating and convincing them to join him, as we can tell by the Reverse Flash symbols on their suits. Even Green Lanterns and Wonder Woman has one. This page also has a Superman, and honestly, sick suit, but being controlled, or I guess led by the Reverse Flash, makes this utterly horrifying to think about, especially when you can see the other members of the Flash family racing behind Reverse Flash. He finally got what he wanted. Eobard Thawne became the Flash.
Number 3, Cyborg Superman. Now there have been 2 major characters that have become Cyborg Superman. The first and most famous is the astronaut Hank Henshaw. When a solar flare hit Henshaw's spacecraft during a space experiment, he and his crew started to mutate. The mutation was so strong that once back on Earth, Henshaw's crew, along with his wife, all committed suicide. Before Henshaw's body disintegrates from the solar flare, he is able to upload his mind using NASA equipment. With the help of the birthing matrix that was used to send Superman to Earth, Henshaw creates a cyborg body with all the powers that Superman has. After this, Henshaw finds out that Superman had thrown the Eradicator into the sun, which caused the original solar flare. Blaming Superman for everything, the newly formed Cyborg Superman seeks revenge on the Man of Steel. To destroy the real Superman's reputation, Cyborg Superman tried to use a nuclear bomb to destroy Metropolis. He was defeated because that's what happens when you go up against Superman, but used his powers to inhabit machines to return over and over and over again, once even conquering most of the planet Apocalypse. After his ultimate defeat, he was taken in by Sinestro during the Sinestro Corps War, making him even more powerful than ever. Since the New 52 era, Cyborg Superman has been revamped as having been the father of Supergirl, Zor-El, who survived Krypton's destruction only to have been transformed into the villain he is today. Why not give Hank's story a read for yourself, starting with 1990's Adventures of Superman number 466.
Penultimately, and at number 2, Overman. Overman is an alternate version of Superman from a different world in the multiverse, obviously, but unlike other versions of Superman, his primary language is German. This is because on this Earth, the German soldiers won World War II, to speak around the YouTube censors, eventually taking over the planet and spreading German everywhere, as in like the language. Another Overman first appeared in Grant Morrison's Animal Man number 23. He is one among several pre-crisis characters that were returned to reality by the Psycho Pirate's Medusa mask. This Overman comes from an Earth based around the grim and gritty stories of the 1980s, and the heroes of this universe were actually a part of an experiment created by the government. Overman... This has got to be one of the most ridiculous points that I saw, but Overman went mad and destructive after contracting an STD. Not even kidding. And the other inhabitants of this Earth were a black and muscular Wonder Woman, an unnamed Flash, and a punk-style Green Lantern. Psycho Pirate pointed out how ridiculous this universe is, but I mean, come on, it's still pretty terrifying. And Overgirl was ruthless on Crisis on Earth X, okay? Finally, and at number 1, Injustice. Injustice is probably one of the most popular alternate Earth stories of this generation. Thanks to the Mortal Kombat-inspired fighting game by the same name, this is an Earth where Joker managed to trick Superman into thinking that he was fighting Doomsday when he was actually killing his wife Lois Lane. That was already bad enough since we know how Superman gets in other worlds when his wife dies. However, this time she was also carrying his unborn child, which he only found out after accidentally killing her. This sent Superman into a fit of rage and caused him to kill the Joker while Batman was intimidating him, much to Batman's dismay. This one action caused Superman to go absolutely berserk and to do the one thing that Batman and everyone else feared, use his power and become the governor of the world. Through this regime, Superman killed anyone who committed a crime, resulting in Batman leading a resistance of other superheroes, not all of whom made it. While the story in the video games remains largely the same of that of the comics it generated, there are a few differences like the amount of deaths in the comics, since none of them are really playable characters, so losing them won't really affect your gameplay experience. Either way, the scariest version of Superman we've seen today, although almost tied with the one who was using guns. And at 10, Psylocke. During the follow-up to the original Contest of Champions story, a seemingly peaceful group of aliens invited the heroes to battle each other and showcase their abilities, with the reward being new tech for all of Earth. In reality though, this was the plan all by the Brood to drain the powers of Earth's greatest champions and then pump them into Rogue, who at the time was carrying the Brood's queen's consciousness. In this competition though, Iron Man was put up against Psylocke. Luckily, Iron Man had built some dampeners into his suit in an effort to limit psychic attacks. However, Psylocke was still able to create the illusion that she was Lady Mandarin once more, and she got the upper hand on Tony for a hot minute before eating it and then getting destroyed by the gold titanium alloy man. And at 9, Falcon. Falcon is an excellent flyer, and in Captain America's third MCU title movie, he is shown as quite the pro pilot, dodging and being able to keep pace with both Iron Man and War Machine, even breaking away a few times, once with the aid of Hawkeye and Ant-Man. However, when the chips are down and we're on the ground, Iron Man certainly has the upper hand, as he demonstrated in the brief moments when Falcon dodged Vision's beam and caused it to hit Rhodey's arc reactor, causing him to plummet hundreds of feet and screw up his legs. And you know, since they're still the good guys, Falcon goes up to check on Rhodey and see if he's okay, but Tony blasts him and knocks him to the ground with one single blast. I have to be honest, it counts, but it's still funny as hell. I love that scene. And at 8, Brother Voodoo. Jericho returned to his native Port-au-Prince, Haiti after 12 years of education and practice in the United States. His brother Daniel though was dying from the spell of a rival Bokor who claimed he served the evil serpent god Damballa. After only a few weeks, Jericho had reached a proficiency in voodoo even greater than his brothers though. To further increase his power, Papa Jambo performed a rite that summoned Daniel Drum's spirit back from the dead and joined it with Jericho's own. And in the Axis storyline, Brother Voodoo used this power to possess Scarlet Witch, who Iron Man then had to fight off. Brother Voodoo, possessing Wanda along with a good Doctor Doom and Red Skull, worked to reverse the spell that caused Axis, but Iron Man escaped its effects by throwing up a last-minute telepathic shield, protecting himself from its reversal. I think that it's weird, like having a good version of Doctor Doom, though. I mean, Doom is literally in his name, but okay. Iron Man still technically won then. Just saying.
Coming in at number 7, we have the Steel Corpse. Hailing from Earth 11326, this version of Iron Man was pretty similar to our own, but with 2 key differences. He's permanently fused with his suit, and he absolutely hates mutants. Fighting alongside other villainous Avengers to wipe out this universe's X-Men, this Iron Man's natural body died long ago after being melded with his machinery, and thus he jokingly calls himself the Steel Corpse as a way of coping with his morbid situation. This version of Iron Man had complete mastery of his weaponry, as they were literally a part of his body, and only a last-second change of heart before sacrificing himself stops this Tony Stark from being one of the absolute worst.
And at 6, Iron Man. In the Avengers crossover known as The Crossing, Iron Man beat himself. Yeah, that's not even the crazy part though. The big hook in this storyline is that many years ago, Kang came back in time and basically brainwashed Tony Stark in the early days of the Avengers. You might ask, what? And then you might ask again, seriously, bro, are you serious? And then another question of, if Tony Stark had been under Kang's control for all these years, why didn't Kang use Tony to help him any of the times that the Avengers actually had beaten Kang? And the answer to that is, of course, we have no f***ing idea. And then there was another bad idea that was thrown into the mix. The notion that Kang only turned to Tony after Hank Pym didn't actually fall for his mental tricks, which is why Hank has mental problems. Yeah, until one faithful team member had the genius idea to go back in time to get Tony Stark before Kang had brainwashed him, and then have that Tony fight against the older Tony. Tony actually ends up nearly killing his younger self, but hey, Iron Man won against Iron Man. Even if it was inevitable that an Iron Man would win, it's good enough for this list, damn it.
At number 5, we've got the time Iron Man shields up right as the Hulk is about to hit him with a huge missile. It seems that at this point in the storyline, the Hulk feels that he's been betrayed by Iron Man, so he's very angry, as usual, and decides to abandon reason and use force instead, as usual. What's brutal about this event isn't just that the Hulk is basically one-shotted by the explosion, but also that Iron Man first rubs it in by schooling the Hulk on the make and design of the missile. He identifies it as his own technology and notices leakage that threatens an explosion that would send them both to Mars and back. So he activates a super powerful shield which protects him from the blast. And those visuals are just ridiculous, seeing the Hulk getting vaporized by the explosion as Iron Man's safe and sound in his little bubble. Not what the Hulk was expecting. Maybe it's time for that dude to start thinking before he acts, especially when he's in the presence of one of the best.
And at 4, the Winter Soldier. Tony isn't able to get the upper hand on the Winter Soldier until he's sufficiently filled with rage of personal loss. And I mean, aren't we all? Rage is the fuel that makes the world go round. Which we actually see play out in the same movie as the fight with Falcon. After Tony learned that Bucky was actually the one responsible for his parents' car crash. I mean, I can see both sides of the coin here. Like, yeah, Bucky at the time was being controlled by Hydra, so it wasn't really him who did it, just his meat suit. But on the other hand, I wouldn't care. He killed my mommy. So yeah, I get why he went nuts. And I always find it funny that somehow Bucky always seems to end up losing his arm, at least his metal one, in some way or another. To be fair though, I don't think Tony would have blown off his arm if it wasn't metal. But like, imagine Bucky was faking having the whole metal arm thing the whole time. And it was just like a cool sleeve that he had that was hiding his real arm, and then Tony blew it off. It was like, ah! That'd be funny. I want to see that what if story. I know it would be absolutely horrific animation wise, but come on, please make it happen. Also, I'm pretty sure that they had the Disney Plus series for What If planned before Stan Lee's passing, and that they were going to reveal him as the Watcher, but couldn't, which is sad. I wish that had happened.
Coming in at number 3, we have Obadiah Stane, aka the Ironmonger in the very first Iron Man film. It's become a bit of a meme at this point that many of the supervillains of the MCU are dark reflections of the same powers and personalities as the heroes they're opposing, and the Ironmonger is the origin of that trope in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Completely guilt-free about selling weapons to all sides, Stane is a ruthless businessman willing to do anything to maintain control of Stark Industries, and shows just how awful Tony's new technology could be used in the wrong hands, and what a monster he could become if he gave up on his deepest morals. Although, honestly, the fact that his idea of upgrading the Iron Man suit is just to make the original one bigger, maybe he's not quite as smart as Tony after all.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Hulk. Thanks to the versatility of Tony's suits and some help from Bruce Banner himself, Iron Man was able to take on the Hulk when Scarlet Witch sent him rampaging across across South Africa in Avengers Age of Ultron, calling down Veronica, which I feel like should be a reference to the Archie comics, but I could be very wrong. The suit proved to be everything we could have hoped for as it went shot for shot with Hulk. The best scene from this fight though is when he grabs Hulk's hand and then like traps it and then just jackhammers the other fist into Hulk's face. Oh, I love that. However, this isn't the only time they fought. They also fought in Iron Man number 132 in 1980, when Hulk punched Tony into a semi-truck, tried ripping his suit open underwater while Iron Man was trying to drown him, which I feel like might have been a bit extreme there, Tony. And even ripped off a chunk of the St. Louis Arch to use as a projectile. In the end though, it took Tony loading an insane amount of energy into his armor to deliver the final blow, taking the big green meanie down. After that though, Hulk turned into Banner and then Tony's suit busted, literally falling to the ground around him. Finally, in at number 1, Sentry. Iron Man's fight with Sentry from Siege number 4 in 2010 is one of those he was being controlled by an evil thing tropes, where technically Sentry was the Void at the time, and the Void may technically be a separate entity of purely negative energy, but it often manifests inside Sentry's body and in essence has the same abilities, so it's like Tony beat Sentry. This isn't a list of heroes that Tony fought while they were on the good side, okay? It's a list of the most powerful heroes that Tony has beat, even if they weren't heroes at the time. It's good enough. During the events of Siege, Void served Norman Osborn as part of his Dark Avengers, raining destruction down on Earth and Asgard, which is definitely an issue for the world, because you know, Earth. While Thor may have been the one to deal the killing blow, though Tony was the one who had weakened Void into a state where he could be killed. So good on you, Tony. You took down basically a god and lived. Pretty impressive if you ask me. Especially because like, didn't Sentry like tear Ares in half or something nuts like that? I remember talking about that. I feel like that was Sentry. I think Sentry tore the Marvel version of Ares in half. Or was that another person? I can't remember.
At number 10, it is the time when Iron Man almost kills a non-Cyttorak powered Juggernaut. In this exchange, Juggernaut is on a tear, and Thor, Ghost, Luke Cage, and Iron Man appear to try and put a stop to him. Iron Man warns Juggernaut with total confidence to stand down because the numbers are against him. Juggernaut then basically hits L2 and activates his taunt saying, "Then it's almost even." Should not have said that. So instead of humoring any more of this back and forth, Iron Man promptly follows through with his threat and blasts Juggernaut, almost killing him. The blast he hits him with is a sonic beam that he's used before to put down a whole regiment. The attack injures Juggernaut so badly that he's basically like steaming and bleeding from every orifice on his face. It's so bad that Luke Cage has to stop Iron Man before he kills the Juggernaut there and then. And it's pretty clear that Juggernaut had no idea that Iron Man would dominate the battle this much. And it becomes one of the many moments where Iron Man is able to come through and show everyone that he's not only one of the most powerful in the room, but that he's also willing to follow through. Okay, at number 9, we have the time when Iron Man is called to free hostages from an enclosure made of adamantium and vibranium, two of the strongest materials in the known universe. Remember, adamantium is the metal that reinforces Wolverine's skeleton and what his claws are made of, and vibranium is what Black Panther's weapons are made of, which can absorb and amplify sonic energy. So when Cardiac traps his hostages in a massive enclosure made of these materials, he clearly doesn't believe that there's any chance anyone could thwart his plans. But when Iron Man arrives on scene, he promptly backs himself up and basically turns his body into a human missile, rocketing towards the enclosure and busting a huge hole in it with his fist. This allows oxygen to enter the chamber, giving the team much more time to eventually save the hostages entirely. He does break his arm and a few ribs, but once again, he takes a villain's confidence and absolutely shatters it with his supreme power and iron will. At number 8, we have an event that is counted widely as one of Iron Man's most powerful feats. Mandarin and Iron Man find themselves facing off against a common enemy, an army of dragons led by Fin Fang Foom and Chen Su. And the dragons seem to be winning. After some pretty close calls, Iron Man and Mandarin seem to be at a stalemate, realizing that the dragons are just not letting up. At this very moment, Chen Su morphs back into dragon form and makes a final appeal to Mandarin for the rings, citing their power and how he is ill-equipped to control them himself. Iron Man realizes that this may be true, but that he is much more than a man, so he could himself unleash the true power of the rings, and he does. He grabs Mandarin's hands and unleashes an enormous explosion that levels a few mountain ranges as well as Fin Fang Foom and Chen Su in one go. This is another moment where a major enemy underestimates Iron Man's superhuman abilities and pays the price for it.
And in 7, Magneto. Yes, at the time of the battle of Iron Man and Magneto, Magneto was on the up and up, and as far as I'm aware, currently is. During Avengers vs. X-Men number 2 from 2012, the Avengers engaged the X-Men on their island home Utopia to get their hands on Hope and stop the coming threat of the Phoenix. This issue, among other interwoven ones, showed various Avengers facing off against mutants like Cyclops and Emma Frost, and Magneto and Iron Man going toe-to-toe. Which seems to be absolutely easy cheese given Magneto's control over metal, but Tony knew about this and had a suit composed of carbon fiber tubes, as well as studying magnetism in his free time, because why not? So in a moment of distraction when Magneto realized what the Phoenix would actually bring power-wise, Tony managed to land a final blow and knock him from the sky. I mean, sure, Magneto had a moment of distraction that allowed Tony to win, but half of the fight is staying mentally in the fight. You fight with your skill and your mind, and Magneto dropped it.
At number 6 is the time when Iron Man unhinges a plan set by the Raxon Corporation when they detonate a deposit of vibranium to try and destroy a fleet of battleships. Basically, going back, it starts with a battle between Iron Man and Namor, which is interrupted by the realization that Raxon is trying to gain control of a whole island due to a deposit of the highly valuable metal vibranium mentioned earlier. When a group of battleships close in to prevent this from taking place, the corrupt corporation decides to detonate the vibranium so that no one can have it. And it seems to be part of the plan to destroy these battleships in the process. But what does Iron Man do? He decides he wants to control the narrative and physically tows the 5 battleships away from the explosion. This makes it so Raxon just destroys the vibranium for no reason. And Iron Man does this with one of his old armors too. He can't help but show everyone that he has the strength to change everyone's plan at any given time and leave them in the dust wondering what happened.
Coming in at number 5, we have the Iron Maniac. On the dark alternate world of Earth 5012, most of the superheroes of this reality are dead after an unknown fatal error made by Reed Richards. A vengeful and violent Tony Stark makes it his life's mission to get revenge on Reed and modifies his armor to resemble that of Reed's worst enemy, Doctor Doom. This insane version of Iron Man killed the Human Torch and was eventually banished to the main Marvel universe, where he had to be subdued by the combined efforts of Spider-Man, Captain America, and Black Widow, who found it a bit unnerving to be fighting such a far-gone version of one of their closest allies. This Tony was just as resourceful as the real one, however, as he'd even escape custody by building a new suit from the remains of a life model decoy. Pretty resourceful for an insane Iron Man.
Okay, at number 4 is the time when Iron Man fractures the Phoenix Force with his Phoenix Buster armor. Now, I'm not sure if the Phoenix Force can physically feel anything, let alone embarrassment, considering it's a cosmic entity powerful enough to shatter whole worlds like glass, but if it could, its face would be red and hot after Iron Man absolutely wrecks Phoenix Force, forcing it to split up into 5 pieces. And the Phoenix Force isn't the only one who should be feeling the burn from this huge win by Iron Man. Thor even fails to take down Phoenix Force with his hammer right before Tony succeeds at it. So Iron Man is just showing everyone up in this event. And this is a huge event that had been building up for a while. Phoenix Force had been posing a huge threat to the X-Men and the Avengers in this storyline. So Iron Man just showing up and blowing it up into a bunch of pieces is pretty humiliating for such a powerful being. I just like to picture Phoenix Force getting all geared up about taking out all these superheroes and then their plans having to change entirely after a little human in his own little armor appears to stop them in their tracks. It's just, yikes, wrecked.
Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Spider-Man. Iron Man and Spider-Man have fought almost as much as they've teamed up, with Civil War being one of the multiple times they did both. While Peter and Tony's connection during the 2005 run of New Avengers initially saw Spidey joining Team Iron Man in the conflict, which actually ended up resulting in Peter unmasking himself on live television, then coming to regret it and having some horrible future comic storylines. The wall crawler changes his tune once he learns about Tony's secret prison in the negative zone, the moral implications of which makes Peter switch sides, because you know he was imprisoning heroes who disagree with superhero registration in a different freaking yeah. Peter wins the first round despite Tony threatening to kill Aunt May and Mary Jane, but when the two meet at Yankee Stadium later on, Spider-Man gets absolutely pummeled. But don't worry, Spider-Man gives as good as he gets in other issues. Go watch the top 10 most powerful superheroes who lost to Spider-Man if you want more info on that. That's right, I'm telling you to go watch another video. But after this one, of course, you're only 2 numbers away. You only got 2 more to go. Stay.
Okay, nearing the top of our list at number 2, we have the iconic face-off between Iron Man and Captain America. During the Civil War conflict, the Avengers are split into 2 different factions, one side being led by Captain America, the other by Iron Man. And as tensions escalate on either side, it finally culminates to a big battle between the 2 sides, and of course between Iron Man and Captain America themselves. But like everyone else on this list, Captain America somehow underestimates Tony Stark when he tries to pull a fast one on him and disable his armor. After what seems like a conciliatory handshake between Iron Man and Captain America, Tony notices a small electron scrambler device on his hand, leaving him open to a blow by Cap's shield right to the face. But as Iron Man is laying on the ground, petrified, he simply reboots his armor and gets back up. I don't think Captain America expects this either, because Iron Man flies at him and after an effortless fist fight, knocks him to the ground, almost severing his jaw with one massive punch in the face. This is high up on the list because Captain America is a very skilled strategist, and watching him get shown up so hard like this has to be pretty humiliating, especially in front of all his peers like that. Oof. At number 1, it is the face-off that Iron Man has against Magneto during the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline. This event takes the top of the list because of the irony. Get it? Iron-y? The irony of this particular face-off, given that Magneto manipulates metal and Iron Man is made of it. Fans had been anticipating this face-off for some time, so when it came, everyone expected Magneto to take the W. And that includes Magneto himself. But in classic ingenious Iron Man fashion, Tony Stark shows up to the fight with a special non-metal armor made out of nanotubes, stealing this huge advantage from Magneto. But that's not where it ends. Iron Man then harnesses the power of Jupiter's magnetic field to power up his armor and take down the magnetic supervillain. And while Magneto is coming back for one final attempt, he's distracted by Phoenix Force, giving Iron Man the chance to knock him out properly this time. This is a huge embarrassment for Magneto since he's the obvious choice for this battle. It might take some time to recover from that one, and I'm not just talking about his physical wounds.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Iron Goblin. Coming from an alternate universe where the Spider Island event wound up being permanent, Tony Stark was initially transformed into a human spider hybrid under the control of the villainous Spider Queen. During a battle with the Resistance, however, Tony was sprayed with the same goblin formula that had corrupted the mind of Norman Osborn, transforming Tony Stark into the Iron Goblin, with a mechanical new costume to match. And while this version of Tony would eventually decide to sacrifice himself in a last moment of humanity before his goblin insanity fully took over, the combination of Iron Man and Green Goblin tech is still a pretty terrifying combo that Spider-Man should hope never reappears. Coming in at number 9, we have the corrupted Iron Man from the controversial 90s event, The Crossing. When a variant of the time-traveling villain Kang the Conqueror, known as Immortus, began using the neural link in the Iron Man suit to secretly begin altering Tony Stark's brainwaves, Iron Man became a sleeper agent within the Avengers and eventually attacked his companions outright after secretly manipulating them for years. While eventually defeated by a time-traveling 19-year-old version of himself, and then retconned into Tony going back to his usual status quo in the Marvel Universe, this controversial storyline shows what would happen if Iron Man truly turned out to be a traitor. Coming in at number 8, we have Iron Thor. During the event that saw God Emperor Doom in control of a Marvel universe converted into a new Battleworld, Doom maintained his complete control over the many realms of Battleworld with a police force army known as the Thor Corps. One of the most powerful of Doom's personal army was the being known as Iron Thor, wearing a combination of the Iron Man armor and Thor's iconic helmet, and investigating any potential rebellions to his master Doom's rule. Even capable of wielding Mjolnir, this super powerful character still managed to be murdered by the hero Warrior Woman as an example of rebellion against Emperor Doom. He might have had a short life, but man, I really love that Iron Thor design.
At number 7, we have the time when Iron Man escapes the black hole created when Godkiller self-destructs. What's embarrassing about this event is that Godkiller's intentions are to take Iron Man with it in the blast created by its own self-destruction, and it's very sure that it'll accomplish this task considering Iron Man is aboard it. Godkiller is basically a giant suit of armor and Iron Man is in it. That's strangely hard to explain, but I think you know what I mean. And I don't blame Godkiller for having high expectations for this final feat, considering the black hole it ends up creating is the size of Earth, meaning that it would have 24 times the mass of the sun. So that means that the only thing Godkiller miscalculates, much like everyone else on this list, is Iron Man's strength, speed, and durability. And yeah, Iron Man comes flying out of the black hole, escaping the close call with his life completely intact. And that means that Godkiller obliterates himself basically for nothing, allowing Iron Man to escape to safety, despite the pull of 24 suns on his back. Godkiller gets absolutely owned here, but at least he's not alone. He's got the other 9 villains on this list to talk it out with.
Coming in at number 6, we have the infamous Iron Patriot, aka Norman Osborn. Best known as being the alter ego of Spider-Man's nemesis, the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn has long been one of the biggest threats in the Marvel Universe, manipulating events from afar as the CEO of Oscorp. Following the invasion of Earth by the Skrull army, Norman found himself suddenly in the public eye and with goodwill after being the one to personally defeat the Skrull Queen. Norman would use this influence to lead the Dark Avengers as the Iron Patriot, a twisted version of Iron Man combined with Captain America's patriotism that tricked the public into trusting Norman, and showing that Tony Stark is definitely not the worst billionaire in the Marvel world.
Halfway through into number 5, Daredevil. In the aftermath of the Axis storyline I mentioned earlier, Tony remains swamped and starts using his tech for even more personal gain than before. Yeah, he's not evil exactly, but he's certainly not above getting all of San Francisco addicted to his new gene rewriting extremist app. Daredevil, who recently relocated to the city after being barred from practicing law in New York, doesn't like this for some reason, almost as if he has a conscience. But when he first confronts Tony in his new island mansion, the armored adventurer just tosses Matt Murdock into the ocean. Just flings him right out the window. They have another fight later on that is an actual fight, but Tony ends up winning yet again. 2 issues later though, Tony actually ends up saving Daredevil from falling off a building, but then traps him in armor and wipes his memory of all the bad things that he's discovered about Tony, so I don't think he did for Matt's sake.
Coming in at number 4, we have the superior Iron Man. During an event known as Axis, many Marvel heroes and villains had their morality completely inverted, with good guys becoming bad, bad guys becoming good, and so on and so forth. One of the few changes that wasn't reversed by the end of the event, however, was the morality of Iron Man, who in his evil form still possessed all of the intelligence and dark aspects of Tony's personality, and managed to build a shield for himself to prevent being turned into a hero again. Infecting much of the planet with a new version of the Extremis virus, and using artificially intelligent drones to assert his dominance, this version of Tony was only finally cured by the Marvel Universe's collapse into Battleworld resetting his morals, meaning that this was a villain that the rest of the Avengers didn't even manage to properly defeat.
Which brings us to number 3, when Iron Man totally humiliates this fleet of guys wearing power suits that they think could combat his own. With their suits having the same firepower as some small countries, they expect there's no way Tony Stark could match up against them. In fact, Tony is even wearing his classic armor, which isn't quite as powerful as his updated suit, so they even have a better chance than usual to even the score. And still, they're made to look like fools, as Iron Man easily evades their heat-seeking missiles and diverts them to actually backfire and destroy the armored assailants themselves. It's just an absolute joke watching him face off against these guys, carrying them around like they're action figures and throwing insults at them, and they seem so confident. That's what kills me about this list, is how confident all these villains are before Iron Man shows them who's boss.
It just makes the wins all more embarrassing when they come.
Coming in at number 2, we have the evil Emperor Stark. Hailing from the destroyed world of Earth 42777, this version of Iron Man was perhaps the cruelest the multiverse had ever seen, as he manipulated Magneto and the Brotherhood of Mutants into declaring war on humanity, then used the resulting anti-mutant backlash to secure power as the world's only superhero. Holding entire countries hostage with natural disasters and even spreading plagues among his own citizens, this version of Tony declared himself Emperor Stark, taking the cloak of Doctor Doom as a final trophy. This was Iron Man at his most evil, and he was an incredibly powerful threat when encountered by the multiverse-traveling Exiles, only eventually defeated by his own universe's last superhero survivor, Sue Storm. A tragic end for a tragic villain. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Zombie Iron Man. When Earth 2149 was first hit by the zombie plague that's since been highlighted in multiple Marvel spin-off series, this version of Iron Man attempted to use teleportation technology to escape to a different universe with Nick Fury. However, a zombified Fantastic Four arrived too quickly for this plan, and Tony was bitten, becoming a living corpse inside his metal armor and developing a bloodlust and pure hunger for human flesh. Still surviving even after having his legs blasted off by the Silver Surfer, the zombified Iron Man would go on to lead the rest of the undead heroes and villains in an attack against Galactus and gain this universe's power cosmic, meaning he could now pursue more flesh throughout the entire universe and bring the zombie plague to the rest of the doomed cosmos.
Number 10, Outsmarted. One of the most famous fights between the Hulk and the Thing also happens to be one of the first. This one goes down in Fantastic Four issue number 12, where the Fantastic Four are led to believe that the Hulk is the one behind a bunch of destruction, an attempt to get together to try and stop him. However, this does not end up working out very well. That's because the Hulk is not only the strongest there is, but he also manages to outsmart them almost completely. Hulk realizes that the FF have the advantage, since together they are very powerful, but if he can take them on one by one, then he stands a better chance at defeating them. That's right, it wasn't even his brute strength, but his strategy that allowed him to defeat the Fantastic Four this time around. Well, almost. The Thing seemingly defeats the Hulk with his piledriver punch, but in reality, his punch misses, and it was actually an energy ray that hit the Hulk and knocked him out. Fortunately though, this reveals to the FF that the Hulk was not behind all the destruction, and yeah. They can at least now go after the people that are actually responsible. Number 9, Illuminate the Truth. In the secondary short comic that is included in the World War Hulk prologue Worldbreaker, titled Round Trip, we get to see an alternate Hulk embarrass a group he refers to as the Illuminators, obviously the more cartoonish version of the Illuminati. This group ends up sending Hulk to space and another planet in a spaceship, ultimately because he stole Namor's sandwich. How does Hulk embarrass them? In a similar fashion to his plan in the reality of Earth 616, he ends up heading homeward after the group exiles him. Here, he doesn't necessarily seem to have the same trauma behind him as he does on 616, fueling his rage even more, but the Illuminators are still completely in a tizzy over the fact that the Hulk ship seems to be on a return course after they sent him away. Except Namor. Namor feels safe knowing that he lives deep in the ocean and that if the surface world gets all smashed up, he and his kingdom will probably still be good.
Number 10, Claw. Claw, which is Hulk backwards, is basically what happens when the Hulk goes Hulk. He is another one of the evil personalities inside Bruce Banner's head. This version of Hulk has black skin with these rad glowing red scars. He has red demonic eyes, white hair, and big old talons. Claw emerges when Hulk reaches a sufficient level of rage, which is strange because regular Hulk has gotten way more powerful than this version of Hulk. The Claw personality is usually suppressed and has only shown up a few times, and not for very long, I might add. He appeared first in the Axis storyline, where heroes and villains had their moralities switched. Hulk isn't exactly always a perfect dude. He will go on rampages and hurt people. He doesn't intend to. Over time, he has been able to hone his rampages into one target, or even not rampage like that at all. But since Claw is his opposite, he lets his rage hurt and maim everyone, putting even the villains on alert. It looks terrifyingly awesome and no one is safe from his rage. Number 9, Infernal Hulk. On Earth 11638, Bruce Banner was officially completely done with dealing with the unpredictability and rage of the Hulk. So, when Spider-Man introduced Bruce to Stephen Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, Banner became his apprentice, and after lots of training in the mystic arts, learned how to separate himself from the Hulk entity. He did this by sending it to Hell and making it a demon. And this was a great solution, until the 616 Hulk, along with Deadpool and Spider-Man, came to Earth 11638. The Infernal Hulk managed to enter back into the realm of Earth, swapping places with 616 Banner's Hulk persona. Infernal Hulk went after the new Sorcerer Supreme, Bruce Banner, who was saved by both Deadpool and Spider-Man. So, how did they defeat this demon Hulk? Well, Sorcerer Bruce reversed the banishing spell that sent Hulk to Hell, and just before Infernal Hulk could return to his original Bruce Banner body, Bruce had his neck snapped, killing him. But his spirit lived on in the astral plane, so it's all good. Number 8, Marvel Apes. Marvel Apes is, well, I mean, it's all the Marvel characters as apes. It's pretty self-explanatory, actually. After Marvel Zombies, which I'm sure you're tired of hearing about, Marvel wanted another cool and weird alternate universe. So, we got this. I actually really like it, but I'm a sucker for alternate worlds. Like the regular Hulk, this ape Hulk was a big green monstrosity. He resembled a big gorilla, and he was obviously furry. So that's like the main difference. He was still the strongest ape out there and extremely prone to smashing things whenever he got upset. This ape Hulk helped in the battle against the vampiric ape Vengers and would later join a group dubbed the Prime 8, led by Nick Fury.
Coming in number 10, we've got Spider-Man. A cursory Google search will reward you with a plethora of insane clickbait homebrew animations, pitting Spider-Man against the Hulk in the lowest resolution possible. Ah, the internet. Is there no end to your ridiculous cash grabs? Remember the era of Spider-Man Elsa videos? What a time to be alive. However, the bouts between Spider-Man and Hulk don't end at cheesy animations and gaming channels. There are indeed a few fights between the two in official Marvel stories. Cool, popular, and versatile as Spider-Man is, there really isn't a way for him to beat the Brute in head-to-head combat. He's got super strength and spidey senses, but that's not enough to take out a towering monster of flesh and gamma radiation. He's used his smarts to great effect in the past, putting other heroes' technology and strategies to use and defeating overpowered opponents. There are instances of Spider-Man outmaneuvering Hulk too. And there was also the time that he had some godly cosmic powers, but that's not exactly fair, is it? However, in the end, our green pal will likely come out on top of any fight between these two. Most times, Spidey would be best just to hide out until the Hulk leads. If he's less lucky, he'll get walloped and pass out, which has happened a couple times. The Hulk is pretty strong. Coming at number 9, we've got Wolverine. Say it isn't so. The Hulk and Wolverine never would fight. They're both so friendly and easy to get along with. I almost had you for a second, didn't I? Now, these two are almost contractually obliged to duke it out from time to time now, aren't they? Going way back to the era before Wolverine was even an official X-Men, this duo would fight over just about anything, and it really could go either way. Like, Wolverine has beaten the Hulk before, albeit in the grim dark universe of Old Man Logan, but in most cases, James Howlett loses out to the Hulk. Sure, he's technically invincible and will always bounce back in one way or another, well, most of the time. There's no dealing with brute force that the Hulk has to offer. Way back before Wolverine was even introduced in X-Men, the two fought with the Hulk refusing to back down. Then there's the time that the Hulk returned from space looking to exact some revenge on those who would send him out there. Wolverine definitely had his butt kicked this time in particular. And who could forget the legendary rip and tear fest that was Hulk versus Wolverine atop a mountain in Tibet. God, Hulk really let him have it that time, didn't he? Limbs were removed and tossed to different mountaintops, and legs were threatened to be eaten. Not a good look for our pal Wolverine now, is it? But what can you do? Beating the Hulk isn't something most folks even have a chance at. Coming at number 8, we've got Iron Man. Wait, aren't these guys both founding Avengers? Why would they ever have to fight? Well, that's the thing, there's always a reason or two. They've got big, science-centered brains and plenty of power for sure. However, Tony Stark tends to get on people's nerves and also makes a bunch of decisions without consulting others. The Hulk does not take well to this, not one bit. So of course the guy with the craziest technology is going to have to take on the sheer physical might of a creature that thrives on anger. It's just gotta happen. And fight they do, but here's the thing. It's not often that Iron Man scores a decisive victory or even a victory at all. No matter how powerful and advanced he makes his weaponry, no matter how far ahead he plans to fight the Hulk, he comes with some inherent limits. His tech will eventually run out of juice, get damaged, or reach a predetermined limit. You can't really make stuff push too far past the limits of the materials it's made of. Hulk, on the other hand, will always be getting angrier and therefore stronger. stronger. He's like a perpetual motion machine of rage and fury. So even with the Hulkbuster suits, darts to sap strength, and a bevy of other interesting anti-Hulk technology, eventually this will all run out, leaving the Hulk to do what he will. It's happened time and time again, muscle beats machinery in this case. There's that time that Stark sent Hulk off into the universe, I guess, but that resulted in World War Hulk, which wasn't very fun for anyone on planet Earth. Whoops. Coming in at number 7, She-Hulk. Speaking of World War Hulk, funny how that works, right? One would think that Hulk loves his cousin too much to fight her. They have a long, strong history together, essentially treating each other as siblings, and don't often get mad with each other anyways, despite the anger inherent in their powers. Hell, Bruce Banner is the reason that She-Hulk is the way she is. After an emergency blood transfusion, Jennifer Walters is endowed with a less intense version of Bruce Banner's condition, like a watered-down Hulk. Still plenty powerful, and possibly the strongest woman in Marvel, but she's not quite a match for Bruce's monster. However, like I was saying before, why would they ever fight? They're family. Well, World War Hulk changed the way the Hulk saw the world. Totally fueled by anger and revenge, he came back to Earth a changed being. And coming across his cousin, he felt no remorse in slamming her so hard into the ground that the Earth around her was turned into a crater. Holy smokes, Hulk, no mercy, eh? Coming in at number 6, we've got Loki. I feel like this moment cemented the Avengers as the premier attraction in Marvel's budding cinematic universe. Back before we had any confirmation of Infinity Stones or gauntlets, we had the Tesseract. Loki, god of mischief and brother to the mighty Thor, used this object to cause all sorts of mayhem. This wasn't his only trick, but it worked particularly well. Being a god, Loki was pretty cocky though. What could Earth's heroes do to stop me, he thought. Well, the Hulk had something to say about that. He tossed the so-called puny god around like a child with a doll having a temper tantrum. Got some chuckles, inspired some memes, the works. However, this little fight had been hotly contested. Loki, again, a literal god, likely wouldn't have been hurt by this interaction at all. Like, would the Hulk have even had an effect on him? Stranger things have happened for sure. This moment might have just been played for laughs to ensure an audience hit, but hey, Hulk did indeed beat the snot out of Loki in this particular instance. Coming in number 5, we've got The Thing. Strong arm versus strong arm, a classic trope, a legendary fight. Other than Wolverine, I'd say The Thing is one of the Hulk's most lasting hero opponents. Both considered immortal, unbeatable, impossible to damage, this is a heavyweight bout like no other. However, the Hulk definitely takes precedence when he's in revenge mode. So when he wanted to go and find and fight the Avengers, the Fantastic Four stepped in. Benjamin Grimm wanted a piece of the gamma-saturated super, so the two decided to throw down on their own. After an exchange of massive blows, eventually the Thing did drop. It's gotta hurt fighting the Hulk, but at least he can take a hit. Coming in number 4, the Avengers. Yes, all of them. That's the thing, this seems to happen quite often. Nobody really knows how to deal with the Hulk, and this is an issue that rears its ugly head quite often. Even though he is often part of the group himself, if things go a little sideways, it's not unlike the Hulk to decide to go solo after working out some frustration. And by working out frustration, I do mean slapping his former comrades around. He can do that no problem too, the Hulk is strong. Why else would Tony Stark constantly be dreaming up contingency plans related to the bulky boy? But yeah, the Avengers don't often beat Hulk if they have to take him on. Usually it's making him turn back into Bruce Banner or getting him as far away from the fight as possible, and when that doesn't work, the Hulk beats folks down and leaves. Simple as that. Coming in number 3, we've got Doctor Strange. You would think that the Sorcerer Supreme would be able to deal with a meathead no problem, a spell or two, and the problem's done with. However, again, during World War Hulk, the rage proved to be a little too much. Holy moly, Hulk, calm down, why don't ya? Strange often sends Hulk to different dimensions or far, far away if it looks like things are getting too rough. In this fight, he decides to channel a universe-destroying demon to give him that upper hand. It seems to be working at first, but as is the case with many fights involving last-ditch efforts against the Hulk, the new powers can only last so long. When Strange starts to lose control of this demonic power, the Hulk is just getting angrier, and when Hulk gets mad, he gets strong. With this in mind, I'm sure you can guess what happens next. Doctor Strange, unconscious. Coming in number 2, we've got the Silver Surfer. No, not Silver Surfer, Herald of Galactus, wielder of powers beyond mortal understanding. But it's true, Hulk did indeed take out this incredible hero, although it was under some very unique circumstances. Some very zombie circumstances, in fact. Showing up just in time to see the world totally gripped by the zombie apocalypse, he does his best to help out. The number of heroes attempting to eat him proves to be too much though, and he's overwhelmed before the Hulk arrives. Using his massive size and strength to push through the crowd, Hulk consumes Silver Surfer, gaining a bit of his power cosmic along the way. Yikes. And finally at number 1 we've got Sentry. Sentry should be Earth's strongest warrior. After being imbued with the powers of a super soldier serum hundreds of thousands of times stronger than the original, he became incredibly powerful. Almost too powerful if you ask me. Thing is, this kind of strength is only barely enough to handle the Hulk. When the Hulk and his Warbound came to Earth, Sentry was there to fight him. However, they essentially fought each other to a standstill, with each reverting back to their human form. But even after all that, Bruce Banner gets the last hit in. Classic.
Number 8. To Hear You Scream. Speaking of World War Hulk, one of the most embarrassing fights comes from the very beginning of that event, in World War Hulk issue number 1, when Hulk faces off against Black Bolt. Black Bolt and his queen, Medusa, you see, have some ego, which ends up quickly turning into hubris for them. Black Bolt had fought the Hulk before and won, so it was for this reason that they barely even gave Hulk the time of day when he shows up. When Hulk rushes them both, angry for what has happened to his people and the planet that he freed and made his own, Black Bolt only responds with a whisper, saying, "Enough," and with the force of his words pushing Hulk far back. But Hulk ends up coming out on top as he immediately recovers and leaps back at Black Bolt. He didn't come to Attilan for a whisper, he came to hear Black Bolt scream, and it definitely seems like he makes him scream. It does not look like he's in great shape after that conversation. Number 7. Size isn't everything. It really isn't in terms of battle, as is proven in the Ultimates issue number 5. You see, in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, Hulk isn't exactly a hero. Here the Avengers are known as the Ultimates, although there is also an Avengers team in this reality, but trust me, they aren't quite the heroic equivalent to the 616 team that we know. But the Ultimates pretty much are that. As Hulk goes on a rampage downtown, the Ultimates must band together in an effort to defeat him. And to be clear, in this reality, Hulk isn't on the Ultimates. The first one up to bat to try to tackle this big beast is Giant Man, aka Hank Pym. He attempts to defeat the Hulk as, well, a giant man. But just because Hulk is smaller than Hank doesn't mean he can't still pack a punch. While Giant Man attempts to hold Hulk beneath his hands and ask him to calm down, also calling him puny, Hulk responds by jumping onto Giant Man's face and threatening to rip his head off and use it like a toilet bowl before punching his lights out. Proving that, yeah, even if you think, well, I'm a lot bigger than the Hulk, it doesn't mean that the Hulk can't mess you up. Number 6. Bustin' makes me feel not so good. In the case of Tony Stark, that is. While the Hulkbuster became a famous suit of armor in the Avengers film franchise, we also know it from the comics. During the events of World War Hulk, Tony attempted to use this armor to defeat the Hulk when he returned to Earth and threatened to destroy it if he wasn't given the heroes responsible for sending him into space. One of which who was responsible was Tony, who actually initially created the Illuminati group that sent the Hulk away. Tony had also created nanotech, which would in theory be capable of suppressing the Hulk's powers, actually even forcibly using it on Jennifer Walters previously, which she actually sued him for in return. However, the Hulkbuster, the nanosuppressant, even the big bombs that they attempted to use all did nothing. Hulk's pain was so intense, his anger so great, that he became powerful enough to survive all of this and remain in his Hulk form. So apparently it doesn't matter how smart you are, Tony, or how prepared. In the end, if Hulk wants to smash, he's going to continue to smash. Can't Hulk bust your way out of that one. Number 5. J'accuse. Blade is one of the newest members of the Avengers main roster, and being new, it seems that he doesn't quite understand how best to deal with other Avengers members, like former and founding Avenger member the Hulk. While Hulk is on a rampage, the Avengers attempt to intercede in Immortal Hulk issue 47, and Blade thinks he has it all figured out. He thinks that Hulk has actually been transformed into a vampire thanks to his new/old powers like being stronger at night and being able to return from the dead. Blade might know vampires, but that doesn't mean he's always right when it comes to his suspicions. Hulk's response to Blade's accusation? To ask him if he can turn into a bat, being that Blade is also part vampire. Blade responds with no, and Hulk tells him it's a good time to learn as he tosses him up high and away. He's like, hey, can you do that? You can't? Great. Bye. Number 4. Hot tubbing. While some people might focus on when Hulk beat Thor in Thor Ragnarok in the MCU when it comes to embarrassing moments, I think there is one that tops that. After the fight, Thor is taken to Hulk's private quarters, where his wounds are tended to. When he awakes with a start, he notices Hulk is also there in what appears to be a hot tub. Hulk hot tub. Thor asks Hulk about how he ended up here, and when he finds out that he crash landed on Sakaar via a Quinjet, asks him where the Quinjet is. Hulk responds by getting up out of the tub and crossing the room to where the window is to show Thor the current location of the Quinjet now. This is when Thor learns that Hulk was, naked in that hot tub, which prompts him to seemingly avert his eyes and remark on how that image is now permanently burned into his mind. Yeah, he looks pretty uncomfortable and pretty embarrassed. Oh boy. Number 3, love frenzy. There was that one time Bruce Banner as the Hulk completely lost it, going into a frenzy that caused him to try and both chase down and beat up She-Hulk. And not only that either. It turns out this whole attempt to do so was actually kind of part of a mating ritual thing. It seems that Hulk forgot that She-Hulk was his cousin, because he was in a frenzied Hulk form. Luckily, Hulk didn't get his way here and was eventually set right again. Although in the Old Man Logan universe, the two do apparently end up together, and we don't really know if Jen was here for that or not. Either way, the whole ordeal is pretty embarrassing for Jen, but also likely embarrassing for Bruce as well, if he was told about it afterwards. It's just embarrassing all around, and also pretty, squicky. Ugh. Number 2, ripped in two. Wow, I like how I made number 2 ripped in two. I didn't do that on purpose, but that's good. When Ultimate Wolverine and Ultimate Hulk fought one another in the Ultimate Universe, Hulk pretty much put Wolverine to shame. In this alternate universe of Earth 1610, Wolverine was hired by Nick Fury to track down the Hulk. Wolverine tracked him down alright, but wasn't so good at dealing with him once he did. At one point, Hulk tears Wolverine straight down the middle and tosses his legs so far away that Logan has a challenging time recovering them. And of course I mean right down the middle, not down the middle this way, down across the middle, I guess I should say. In this reality, Wolverine can't just grow new legs, by the way. In order to recover, he needs to find and basically reattach his legs so that his healing powers, or his survival powers more can basically take effect and kick in and heal him. So yeah, he had to crawl all the way over to find his legs in the snow. Great. Also, mountains. There were mountains there. Number 1, why are you hitting yourself? Well, Thor and Hulk fought in Ragnarok, where Hulk only really won against Thor thanks to the help of Grandmaster, tasing Thor until he passed out, just as he was figuring out how to harness the power of lightning without his hammer too. In the comics, these two have fought actually multiple times. One such occasion involved a showdown where Hulk made fun of Thor for having long hair, mistaking him for a hairy lady and telling him that he should get a haircut. Thor, of course, did not take too kindly to these remarks about his long golden locks, which he quite loves, and fought back against Hulk with his hammer, Mjolnir. However, Thor ended up surprised when Hulk refused to surrender, claiming he was the strongest there will ever be, before grabbing Thor's hammer arm and then making Thor basically hit himself with Mjolnir. Ouch.
Number 7, Maestro. Okay, imagine a version of the Hulk with twice his strength who retains the intelligence of Bruce Banner. Now, take that Hulk and make him a ruthless, tyrannical ruler, power-hungry and evil. And you get Maestro. Our Hulk first comes into contact with him when Rick Jones's daughter takes him into the future to fight his evil future self. But this Maestro easily overpowers the Hulk. In their very first fight, Maestro went to town on the Hulk and won by simply snapping Hulk's neck. That's it. Game over, man! Game over! He then waited for Hulk to heal, taunting him and villain monologuing at him the whole time about all the terrible things they go through as the Hulk, trying to get Hulk to join his side. The only way our Hulk could win was to bring Maestro back in time, to when they gained their abilities. The Gamma Bomb, which destroyed Maestro on an atomic scale. The sheer idea of Hulk becoming Maestro haunted Bruce and Hulk's thoughts for the rest of time. Number 6. Null, Breaker of Worlds. When Kull Borsun, known as the Serpent, who was the villainous brother of Odin, sent down 7 magical hammers to Earth that represented his 7 followers, the hammer Null found its way to our hulking mass of green, transforming him into Null, Breaker of Worlds. Null went rampaging all over South America, bringing him into conflict with the Avengers, who he defeated, and eventually into a fight with Thor. When fighting Thor, Null teamed up with Angrier, Breaker of Souls, which was the Thing, who also got one of these hammers, who was defeated by Thor. But we all know who the strongest Avenger is, don't we? Null was just a bit too powerful for Thor, and instead of facing him one-on-one, the God of Thunder threw Hulk into orbit. He landed in Transylvania and started taking on Dracula and his minions. It was only after Inca, disguised as Betty Ross, showed up that Hulk threw the hammer aside and left to go be in solitude for being used yet again. Number 5, Hulk 2099. Most of us comic book fans know about Spider-Man 2099. It's an incredible story and character, and it was crazy successful. Because of this, Marvel wanted to capitalize, like you do, and they made more 2099 versions of their characters. One such character was Hulk. This version of the Hulk is actually a guy named John Eisenhart. John didn't get his powers after being a scientist though. In the world of 2099, there was a cult known as the Knights of Banner, which, to sidetrack for a second, is a pretty sweet name. But anyways, John was a studio executive and the Knights of Banner wanted to create another Hulk while also making a movie about their cult's history. Yeah, it's weird, I don't know. Eisenhart joins the cult and gets caught in a gamma explosion, turning him into the Hulk. He was a bit different though. For starters, he is terrifying, but he can control his rage, meaning his strength didn't grow indefinitely. He also has claws that can slice through most materials, and his freaky elongated tongue is super strong, which is weird. Number 4, Hulk Venom. In What If number 4, what if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man? Spider-Man is unable to get rid of the Venom symbiote suit, and he enlists aid from other heroes. Hulk just happens to be one of the first to show up, and the symbiote takes an instant liking to Hulk, which kind of makes me wonder why this hasn't happened before, honestly. It easily bonds to Hulk, overpowering his weak mind. So now you have all the powers of Hulk, plus the powers of Spider-Man, which is an interesting idea, truth be told. Number 3, Skulk. The Amalgam comics in the 90s brought the fans one of the things they always wished they had: the heroes of the DC universe and the Marvel universe coming together. It saw the heroes facing each other, but it also, more interestingly, saw mashed together versions of characters. It's how we got the Batman-Wolverine hybrid Dark Claw, who is awesome. But it's also how we got Skulk. Skulk was the combination of Solomon Grundy and the Hulk. Bruce Banner was minding his own business, conducting gamma bond tests in the desert, the kind of thing you do on your perfect Sunday, and then Solomon Grundy appeared. Bruce tried to save the superhuman zombie from the explosion, but the bomb fused the two together, forming Skulk. Skulk was really just Solomon Grundy, but with the Hulk's iconic purple pants. But I feel like the powers of these two characters fused together should be way more awesome than this. Number 2, Ultimate Hulk. Yes, the Ultimate Universe's version of Hulk is similar to the regular Hulk, but his personality? Nuh-uh, honey, it is whack. Bruce Banner, no matter where you find him, is an emotionally scarred dude. It's why he is the way he is. But the Ultimate Bruce Banner? He is selfish, self-absorbed, and just creepy. He was so desperate to be noticed and recognized, he willingly injected himself with an experimental version of a new super soldier formula, turning him into a monstrous version of the Hulk. This Hulk had little to no regard for human life and collateral damage. He even ate people. It was nuts. Ultimate Hulk would join up with Maker, Quicksilver, Kang, and a mind-controlled Human Torch to make up the team known as the Dark Ultimates. He would eventually align himself to be a bit better, but not by much. Number 1, Guilt Hulk. The Guilt Hulk is very similar to Devil Hulk, who represents his anger. Only this version of Hulk represents all the guilt and regret that the Hulk feels for all the horrible things he has inadvertently done while in his Hulk form, as well as the horrible things done to him as Bruce, like being shunned and feared and all the horrible things that were done to him by his father, Brian Banner, which is a huge reason behind Bruce having multiple personality disorder in the first place. Because this persona represents all these things, it's actually more powerful than the Devil Hulk persona. Guilt Hulk even took on the form of Bruce's father inside his head before becoming his true form, which is like a weird xenomorph looking Hulk. This Hulk is incredibly powerful, and it took the combined efforts of many of Bruce's other alter egos to hold and keep the other Guilt Hulk persona repressed deep in Bruce's mind.
Number 10, Zombie Hulk kills Zombie Iron Man. During the events of Marvel Zombies, pretty much almost all of the zombified heroes meet their end at one point or another, save for a lucky, or I guess unlucky, few. Iron Man is not one of the zombified heroes who makes it, however. He is one of the victims of Zombie Hulk, who kills a bunch of other zombies when they start getting angry with him for eating so much, as they fear their food supply of brains and meat is running low. Zombie Hulk crushes Zombie Iron Man to the point that blood sprays out of his mouth and eye holes of his armor. Basically, he squishes him like a grape.
Number 9. Ant-Man. During Marvel's Secret Empire event, you know, the one where Captain America revealed himself to be the supreme leader of Hydra, Ant-Man, like many of the other heroes, naturally sided with the hero side of things and was a dedicated member of the Underground. That is, until his daughter Cassie was abducted by Hydra and he was forced to not only comply with their every demand, but also report to them all the plans of the Underground Resistance. While many of the plans he relayed weren't too major, he was forced to tell Hydra when the heroes managed to find 2 fragments of the Cosmic Cube, and that resulted in Hydra showing up at the Underground's doorstep. I will say though, to his merit, he did confess that he was involved with Hydra and tried to make amends for doing wrong by the team, and he also played a huge role in restoring Steve Rogers when the Cosmic Cube reformed. Now if you've got the time, this storyline definitely deserves a read, starting with 2017 Secret Empire Volume 1, number 0.
Number 8. Iron Man almost kills Tony Stark. Iron Man is really good at making suits, sometimes too good. At one point, he decided to make an AI suit instead of an AI to be used in his suit. This artificially intelligent suit did what most artificial robotic intelligences do. It almost immediately became evil. Although Tony did also decide to use some Ultron code to construct it, which honestly probably was not such a good idea, especially for someone who is supposed to be a computer genius. In the end, the suit created programming that allowed it to feel emotions, and after fighting with Tony Stark and trying to get him to forcibly merge with itself, it eventually felt remorse at its action. While during their fight, Stark suffered a heart attack. The suit sacrificed its own life, giving Stark an emergency and what looks like terrifying artificial heart transplant. Like, you can still see the artificial heart sticking out of Tony's chest. That does not look sanitary to me. Number 7. Tony Stark sacrifices Tony Stark. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it was Tony himself who killed Tony, or while he chose to sacrifice himself in order to ensure the events of Thanos' snap at the end of Infinity War, which initially wiped out 50% of all living beings at random, including half the population on planet Earth, remained reversed, so unsnapped if you will. In order to bring everyone back, the heroes needed to time travel to retrieve the Infinity Stones and use them to create their own Infinity Stone gauntlet. Then the question came of, who was going to wield it. The Hulk was the one to bring back everyone using the gauntlet, but Thanos from the past returned to threaten the heroic plans of the Avengers. He attempted to guarantee that his future self's plot, and really his own plot, remained successful, but Tony managed to get rid of him, wielding the gauntlet himself and using it to wipe out Thanos and his army with his own snap. Unfortunately, because Tony Stark is just a man at the end of the day, the amount of energy this required ended up killing him, despite him wearing his Iron Man armor at the time. Number 6. Dark Avengers kill Tony Stark's evil brain. In issue 190 of the Dark Avengers, we get a glimpse into the pocket reality of Earth 13584, where New York is one of the last vestiges of human civilization that various superhero factions fight for power over. One such faction is led by an evil Iron Man who is now just a brain. His armor was crushed by a giant Janet Van Dyne of the same pocket dimension reality. As his brain ejected from the armor, Trickshot of the Dark Avengers, Barney Barton, Clint's brother, shot the brain with an arrow, killing this alternate version of Tony Stark. Number 5. Captain America kills Steel Corpse. In an alternate reality belonging to Age of X, Tony Stark became consumed by a virus which fused him with his suit, causing him to slowly be digested by it. Ew. Formerly known as Iron Man, Tony adopted the mantle of Steel Corpse following this, which he thought was more appropriate considering, well, he was basically just a corpse in an armor. He joined the Avengers team in their mission to exterminate mutants, but when they decided to rebel against their mission directive, saving mutants instead, an emergency override system caused Stark to be unable to follow suit with the rest of his teammates. Stark told Captain America to save the mutants they were targeting, which he knew meant that Cap would be forced to kill him.
Number 4. Undead Avengers. The living are not welcome on Earth 666, and the world is only consisting purely of the dead, undead, or supernatural beings. Vampires, werewolves, mummies, and more all exist here, and each group is divided into separate factions. But don't fear. The greatest heroes from across these groups are assembled together to protect this world. They are the Undead Avengers. This team is so cool. A Captain America who never recovered from being a werewolf, a part spider Natasha Romanoff, a devil Daredevil, a mummified Thor the Accursed who wields the backwards Mjolnir that casts black anti-magic energy, Vampire Wolverine, Hawkeye, Franken Castle? I mean, come on. These guys come into conflict with Captain Britain when trying to defend the Orb of Necromancy in order for them to spread undeath across all of reality. And they first appear in Secret Avengers number 33.
Number 3, Steve Rogers kills Superior Iron Man. During the events of Time Runs Out, as a final incursion threatened the very existence of the entire planet and universe, Superior Iron Man and old Steve Rogers came to blows. They were fighting about the controversial actions of the one secret organization of brilliant minds known as the Illuminati. Also, Superior Iron Man is just kind of a jerk, so it makes sense that Captain America would be like, I'm gonna fight you, you're evil. Captain America had declared Iron Man and the Illuminati enemies due to their actions, and as such, the two heroes and former friends had come to blows over the argument. Just as the world was about to end, these two fought each other to death, both being taken out by a helicarrier during their fight in their last moments before everything reset. And then Battle World happened. Woo! Number 2, young Tony Stark kills older Tony Stark. During the events of The Crossing, a wildly crazy story, it is revealed that Tony was a sleeper agent for Kang the Conqueror, who he later found out was actually a Mortis in disguise, posing as Kang. Evil older Tony kills tons of people before the Avengers attempt to stop him by bringing back a younger version of himself from the past who they hope can help to stop their Tony. This didn't quite work out as they planned, but in the end, older Tony and fake Kang were defeated when older Tony, inspired by younger Tony, decided to sacrifice himself, switching back to the side of the heroes right before he died. With older Tony dead, it was decided that younger Tony would stay in the future and take his place. Number 1, Tony Stark kills immoral Tony Stark. A crazy turn of events came about that led young Tony Stark to effectively make himself brain dead in the comics in the Invincible No More story. Following Secret Invasion, Norman Osborn created Hammer in the place of S.H.I.E.L.D. and created his own Avengers, which we know as the Dark Avengers, mainly comprised of villains who adopted heroic personas to mirror that of the original Avengers team. To prevent Osborn from getting a hold of information that was gathered from heroes during the events of the first Civil War as part of the Superhuman Registration Act, Stark transferred the files from S.H.I.E.L.D. computers to his own brain, and then later wiped his own mind completely, making him brain dead. Tony would later return, but not really as the same version of himself. This Tony Stark would not have the knowledge of his actions during the first Civil War. How convenient.
Number 10. Age of X Avengers. In the Age of X storyline, the mutant population were feared, and after a phoenix-shaped explosion leveled Albany, the culling of the mutants began. In response to this, the mutant Magneto used his powers to literally steal several buildings from New York and form Fortress X, a safe haven for mutant kind. This led to the creation of a team of non-mutant heroes by General Frank Castle, and led by Captain America, to hunt down this resistance of mutants. The team was made up of Captain America, Ghost Rider, who was killed prior to the actual assault in Fortress X, the Hulk, Invisible Woman, Redback, who is this universe's Jessica Drew, and Iron Man / Steel Corpse. While the team murdered a lot of mutants, Cap eventually called them off to instead defend the mutants, which activated Steel Corpse's Code Omega, causing them to take him out. There was also Plan B, which was the 2 megaton chemical that was carried by the Hulk. Luckily, the mutant population survived this twisted Avenger team.
Number 9, the Avengers kill Iron Man. Okay, so the Avengers weren't solely responsible for his death this time around, but they definitely were the ones who caused it to happen. At least in part. During the events of Armor Wars, Iron Man became branded a criminal by the United States government. Among those opposing the vigilante were fellow Avenger Captain America. This, however, happened at a time where Tony Stark was not known to be Iron Man. His identity remained a secret, and Stark simply claimed that the man in the suit was actually his bodyguard, often remote controlling the suit to kind of make it appear as though they were in the same place at the same time, so no one would question his explanation of the identity for Iron Man. In the end, Stark decided, because of being declared an outlaw, to kill Iron Man, claiming that the man in the suit was named Randall Pierce, and staging Pierce's death by allowing an empty remote-controlled piloted suit to be destroyed during a confrontation with the government. This would later allow Tony to reveal himself as Iron Man, though he would at first claim another employee of his had simply taken up the mantle. But we knew the truth. It was really Tony in that suit. Once again.
Number 8. Deathlock Nation. On Earth 11045, the superhumans grew out of control. They began to take the law into their own hands, more and more, acting as judge, jury, and executioner. This led to popular support from the people for Operation Deathlock. Operation Deathlock was a plan conceived by Weapon Infinity of the Weapons Plus breeding facility called The World to convert all superhumans into Deathlocks. The project began small, with a few normal human Deathlocks, and then those Deathlocks targeted specific heroes who were killed and then converted into super Deathlocks. No hero could stand for long, and soon all superheroes were converted into mindless police robots, which actually resulted in a utopia. Eventually, these Deathlocks began spreading into other timelines and realities, only to be stopped by Apocalypse. This eventually led a team composed of Deathlock, Captain America, Cyclops, Spider-Man, Elektra, Hawkeye, and the Thing to come into conflict with Earth 616.
Number 7. Cadaverous' Avengers. Cadaverous' Avengers were part machine, part man, and all influenced by the villainous Cadaverous. They show up in whatever alternate world J.J. Abrams and his son Henry Abrams' Spider-Man series is relegated to. I don't think it has an official number yet. It does have a temporary reality number though. This team seemed hell-bent on getting revenge on Iron Man, the only surviving Avenger left in this world. Well, I guess Peter was still alive at this point, and I mean, he's normally a part of the Avengers team, at least at some point, but I mean, in terms of the standard Avengers cast, we've all come to familiarize ourselves with through various forms of media, including the films. I mean, especially the films in this case, just based on the roster. These villainous corpse versions of the former heroes face off against the old Iron Man, Ironheart, Spider-Man's son Ben Parker, and his powerless but enthusiastic friend and love interest, Faye Ito. Or is it Ito Faye? Needless to say, these evil counterparts at least weren't in control of themselves, but instead were being influenced by Cadaverous to fight against their former friend and colleague with the use of old Stark Tech neurochips.
Number 6. The Gatherers. The Gatherers are a team of former Avengers of different alternate realities who survived their world's destruction, tricked by an alternate reality Black Knight named Proctor into believing that their world's Circes were to blame. Proctor united them together and gave them a single enemy, the Circe of Earth 616. The team consisted of alternate reality versions of Proctor, Rick Jones, The Thing or Korg, Swordsman, Black Panther, and The Vision, as well as some unknown original villains. But for them to carry out their vengeance, each member had to kill their Earth 616 counterpart within a certain amount of time, or they would die from cellular breakdown. What the members of the Gatherers did not know is that their leader, Proctor, was responsible for the destruction of each world they are from, as he drove that world Circe into madness, causing her to lash out and destroy everything around her, all because of a bad breakup. Damn, dude!
Number 5. Android Ultimates. The Android Ultimates come from Ultimates 3. They make their first appearance in issue number 4 of the Ultimates 3 series. This is where we first learn that these Ultimates aren't really the Ultimates at all, but replacements built by Ultron to act just like them. His plan is to use the team of robotic hero impersonators to destroy man and help the machines of the world rise up. Really all machines too. There's a weird part where they're talking about like, we as machines are just seen as these tools. Us toasters, we will unite. It's like very strange. Of course, the Ultimates themselves will have a few things to say about that whole plan. Ultron styles himself after his father, Ant-Man, but he and his team wouldn't make it past the next issue. It would later be revealed that their leader, Ultron, wasn't actually fully in control, but instead was being puppeted by Dr. Doom. So many reveals where people are actually being controlled by someone else.
Number 4. Swordsman. The Swordsman was Hawkeye's mentor and a criminal who tried to join the Avengers just so they could take advantage of the benefits. When they turned him away, he was approached by Iron Man's archenemy, the Mandarin, who gave him a new sword and a special mission: to infiltrate the Avengers and destroy them from the inside. Mandarin engineered a plot to trick the Avengers into thinking that Iron Man had vouched for the Swordsman. The ploy actually worked, and Swordsman was allowed entry, but not without gaining the suspicion of his new teammates. And honestly, rightly so, because Swordsman planted a bomb in Avengers Mansion, just as he was told to, but began to have second thoughts because of the feelings he developed for Scarlet Witch. When he tried to remove the bomb, he was caught by Captain America and forced into a fight. Despite the swordsman's betrayal, years later he was actually forgiven and welcomed back onto the team alongside his wife Mantis. Honestly, I really think the Avengers are just a little bit too trusting sometimes.
Number 3, Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers technically hail from Earth 616, but they are a completely alternate team when it comes to their roster and in general their backstory and motives. Well, that is, in a way, the Dark Avengers do attempt to do good, but they are just all approaching it from a more villainous side. And many of the team members don't do good for the sake of doing good, but have their own ulterior motives. So can we really call that good? That's a philosophical question for you. The Dark Avengers were introduced when Norman Osborn was given reign over the heroic team after he'd been declared a hero for killing the Skrull Queen Varanki. Aside from getting to build his own Avengers team, which would replace the previous one, S.H.I.E.L.D. had been disbanded and Osborn was allowed to create his own organization to replace it, using the acronym HAMMER, which really doesn't stand for anything. Osborn just thought it sounded cool, so that's not really an acronym, it's just capitalized letters at that point. He pulled together his own Avengers team, which publication-wise became known as the Dark Avengers, composed of various Marvel villains, anti-heroes, and misled heroes in some cases, or heroes who were just like really lost at the time, who Osborn united when the standard Avengers hero members refused to join his team. He did try though. He was like, hey Carol, come be on this team. She was like, hell no.
Number 2. Zombie Galacti. I think most of us are familiar with Earth 2149, which is the home of the Marvel Zombie storyline. Here, a separate reality zombie-infected sentry was sent by his Earth's Watcher. The Avengers were the first on the scene and quickly died or were infected, with the rest of the population falling quickly afterwards. Once the Herald of Galactus, the Silver Surfer, showed up to announce the arrival of Galactus, he was consumed by Hulk, Wolverine, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Giant Man, Power Man, and Captain America, who absorbed his powers and used it to toast other zombies to improve their flavor. Gordon Ramsay would not approve. The Zombie Galacti used the machine to unite their power cosmic to take down Galactus, and after fighting their zombie villains, consumed and absorbed his power too, using it to spread the infection throughout the whole of their universe.
Number 1, Revengers. The Cancerverse Avengers, known as the Revengers, hail from a reality where the world was turned upside down by the fact that death was defeated. I know, how can you kill death? Well, apparently when you make deals with elder god-like beings, anything is possible, like what happened here. In a bid to save Captain Marvel from life-threatening cancer, a deal was struck with the many-angled ones. As a result, death ended up dead, which actually resulted in the whole universe becoming a perverted version of itself. You'd think without death around, the universe would become like a paradise. But no. It became rank with disease that spread and basically couldn't die, becoming known as the Cancerverse. All the heroes who remained here were made to serve the many-angled ones, becoming their loyal servants and attempting to invade other universes eventually and conquer them in the name of their Lovecraftian horror-esque gods, Avengers included, or Revengers included.
Number 10, Tony Stark. Yet another time where Tony has gone off the rails a little bit, this time taking place in the Axis event, in which the morality of Earth's heroes and villains were reversed by magic. While the spell was undone, the now corrupt Tony managed to shield himself and thus retained his evil personality, even though most of Earth's heroes reverted back to their usual selves. With his still vast intellect and suave personality, this darker Tony was able to infiltrate society and build an empire for himself, growing into an egotistical monster, releasing the Extremist 3.0 virus to the public as an app, addicting people to the substance and then depriving them of any further upgrades until they paid his fee of $100 per day. This caused a ton of suffering as a large portion of society basically became addicts and were enslaved to Tony's will. Now, like I said though, this Tony retained his intelligence. He knew exactly what he had to do to balance his cruelty in order to prevent the world from rising up against him. So he engaged in hostile takeovers of many companies, forcing them to promote his extremist apps through blackmail, and even went as far as unleashing an army of advanced drones to act as personal police force. By every definition of the word, he just became a tyrant.
Number 9, Ultimate Avengers. Not to be confused with the Ultimates, who are very much their own thing. This team of Avengers is actually called the Avengers, but is not the Avengers equivalent from the 1610 Ultimate Universe. Are you confused yet? Basically, in the Ultimate Universe, the Avengers team that we know and love from 616 is a little different, including in name. On Earth 1610, the Earth's mightiest heroes go by the name of the Ultimates, and are pretty buddy-buddy with S.H.I.E.L.D. and its director Nick Fury. However, there is a team in this universe that uses the Avengers moniker, but they are quite different from the Avengers we know from Earth 616. On 1610, the Avengers team is more like DC's Suicide Squad. The team is made up of characters who are seen as more disposable by S.H.I.E.L.D. and who are more anti-heroes or just straight up villains. They are a black ops team who is usually brought on for less publicly marketable missions and jobs.
Number 8, Avenger X. When the Avengers initially sought out to track down the Stranger alongside the X-Men, Professor X used Cerebro to locate and rescue Cressida from the cosmic being, and upon first glance, she seemed like the perfect weapon. Her powers augmented the strength and abilities of her teammates, allowing them to take on groups of supervillains with ease. As she was explaining what she was capable of, Scarlet Witch cut her off and just offered her a spot on the team, which honestly made sense because who wouldn't want someone like that on their team? But what they didn't realize is that there was actually a huge cost that comes along with her powers. In order to empower anybody and increase their abilities, she has to drain the lives of everyone and everything around her. And while they were unaware of this, Cressida was plotting to use this power of hers to finally end the Avengers for good, taking them down from the inside by absorbing their powers instead of empowering them. Captain America was the one who confronted Avenger X, and with her plot to divide the Avengers folded, Cressida disclosed the true extent of her abilities by siphoning the Avengers' life force and utilizing their combined powers to quickly defeat them. Number 7, Vision. Now if you know Vision, then you know that he's not usually one to betray his team unless there is a quote-unquote perfectly logical reason for it. There was the time after he linked up with a supercomputer from Titan, and he thought the only way he could protect her was for him to run it himself. At first he only wanted some additional power, and he helped Hawkeye establish the West Coast Avengers, to expand the Avengers' influence, and even met with the leader of the free world about making the leader of the Avengers a cabinet position. When his schemes didn't give him the control he wanted in Avengers number 253, he took over nearly every computer on the planet, starting with the machines that controlled the world's weapons, and he went, let's just say, a little bit crazy with power. Interestingly enough, though, that wasn't the only time Vision betrayed the Avengers, as there was a time that his actions cost the Avengers the trust of the federal government. Vision's difficulties with balancing his emotions got the best of him after he became the leader of the team. In trying to create world peace, Vision tried to take control of the world's computers and defense systems. He was opposed by the Avengers, who had to launch an attack on their own headquarters just to defeat him. Vision eventually realized his mistake and tried to atone for his crime, but unfortunately, the damage was already done. Number 6, Quicksilver. Pietro Maximoff started off his costume career as Quicksilver on the wrong side of the law, working with his sister Wanda on Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Eventually deciding to reform, Pietro and Wanda would join the first new lineup of the Avengers alongside another former criminal, Hawkeye, under the leadership of Captain America. Quicksilver blamed the Avengers for his strained relationship on his sister and his wife, and he gave government information to get back at them. In 1986, the East and West Coast Avengers were playing baseball when they received a surprise visit from the Freedom Force, a group of X-Men villains released from prison to work for the government. Mystique, leader of the Freedom Force, announced to the Avengers that they were to be arrested for treason. And after a fierce battle with the Freedom Force, Captain America agreed to surrender. At a hearing, the Avengers were told that someone had obtained proof that Vision's attempt to gain control of the world's computers was actually a plot engineered by the Avengers themselves. And the Avengers demanded to know who their accuser was, and after much suspense, the traitor was revealed to be none other than Quicksilver. Number 5, Sandman. To his merit, Sandman did actually make an attempt to reform. He received a full pardon for all his misdeeds and even served as a reserve member of the Avengers for a time. During his run as a hero, he was actually able to make friends with his former enemy Spider-Man, but sadly, good things don't last forever, not even in comic books. In 1999, Sandman turned his back on his fellow heroes and joined up with his old partners from the Frightful Four, Wizard, and Trapster. It wasn't entirely his fault since the Wizard used his ID machine to bring out the evil side of Sandman once again, but still. Sandman used the trust he had gained with Spider-Man to his advantage, allowing him a chance to take him by surprise. In returning to his villainous ways, Sandman not only betrayed Spider-Man, but the Avengers as well, causing his membership to be revoked.
Number 4, Captain Marvel kills Tony Stark. During the events of Civil War II, we saw Tony Stark's Iron Man and Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel butt heads over what the best decision would be when it came to using or not using the Inhuman Ulysses' future vision. This all happened after Carol had been attempting to fight Thanos, whom Ulysses had predicted would return, and during the fight, Rhodey, aka War Machine, was killed. Carol was for using Ulysses' visions to prevent possible catastrophic events, whereas Tony was against punishing or arresting people based solely on Ulysses' visions, which he thought might be flawed. The Civil War ended with Carol seemingly killing Tony, though it was later revealed he was still alive, but in a coma, and then of course later on he woke back up, and he would actually even come to forgive Captain Marvel. And now they don't really talk about the fact that that all happened.
Number 3, Dr. Druid. While most would consider Dr. Druid to be a pretty obscure member of the Avengers, he's actually spent enough time with the team to make his eventual betrayal memorable. Dr. Druid is a sorcerer who practices Celtic magic that he picked up from the Ancient One. His magical abilities are overshadowed by another one of the Ancient One's peoples, Doctor Strange, of course. I know it seems like he is just a minor character, but trust me, he is not. Dr. Druid was still a fairly new addition to the Avengers when he had the sudden impulse to become its leader. He started out by undermining the current leader, Captain Marvel, aka Monica Rambeau. He questioned every move she made and constantly stated that the Avengers needed a much stronger leader. And when Captain Marvel had to temporarily step down for medical reasons, Dr. Druid used his mental powers to manipulate the Avengers into electing him as the leader in Avengers number 294. And in this time, he also forced She-Hulk to fight her fellow Avengers, which ultimately led to her quitting the team. As it turned out, though, Druid himself had been under the control of Kang's wife Ravonna, who used him to gain control of the rest of the Avengers, and after Druid was defeated and lost in the time stream, the Avengers actually disbanded for a while. Number 2, Wonder Man. The ionic energy-powered superhero Wonder Man has a long history with the Avengers that goes all the way back to his debut in Avengers number 9 in 1964, the same issue in which he also died. Wonder Man was resurrected years later and has become a staple in the Avengers ever since, either serving on the main Avengers team or in the West Coast branch. When Simon Williams first joined the Avengers, his life actually depended on betraying them, and here I'll explain why. Wonder Man acquired his powers from Baron Zemo and the Masters of Evil. Zemo used an experimental ionic ray to give him his powers, but the effects would end him if he didn't receive a weekly antidote. In order to get that antidote, Wonder Man had to infiltrate the Avengers' ranks and deliver them to the Masters of Evil. Wonder Man led his new team into an ambush, but changed his mind when the fighting started. He helped the Avengers defeat the Masters of Evil even though it meant giving up the antidote. Without Zemo's antidote, Wonder Man seemingly perished, but would eventually return and rejoin the Avengers. Another instance of betrayal by Wonder Man took place in the 2000s when he started being much more aggressive and hateful towards his former teammates. He believed that the Avengers were a disease that was destroying the world instead of making it better. The tension between Wonder Man and the Avengers came head to head when he gathered a team called the Revengers, a small group of heroes and villains with bitter feelings towards the Avengers. Wonder Man led his team in an all-out assault against the Avengers. When Wonder Man was defeated though, it was determined that his ionic energy was actually having an effect on his brain. And when he was finally cured, Wonder Man just apologized for all the trouble he caused, but he still was a traitor nonetheless. And number 1, the Protector. Novar is a Kree soldier who sided with Earth during the Secret Invasion. After taking the name Captain Marvel, the same name used by the Kree hero Mar-Vell, he joined Osborn's Avengers. After leaving the team, he became a member of the official Avengers team as the Protector. He served them very well for a time, and until Avengers vs. X-Men, which saw the world threatened by the coming of the Phoenix Force. The Avengers needed all hands on deck, meaning it was a bad time for one of their own to turn into a traitor. He betrayed the Avengers during the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, although he didn't actually side with the X-Men. If the Protector had his way, he would have helped the Avengers stop the Phoenix Force and continued to serve on their team. But as a Kree warrior, Novar felt compelled to comply with the Supreme Intelligence, who ordered him to steal the Phoenix Force sample from the Avengers and deliver it to the Kree Empire. Novar obeyed, even though the sample was a critical piece of the Avengers' plan to stop the Phoenix Force. When the Protector learned the Kree wouldn't honor their responsibility to protect Earth, he stole the sample back and wanted to rejoin the Avengers. The Avengers, however, wanted absolutely nothing to do with him, and honestly, I can't blame them.